on the side of the N2 between Robert Sobukwe and the N7 Jake Scoville Drive. No obstruction, but just watch for some traffic slowing up as you approach that particular scene. And again, there's protesting between Umtata and Dutwa along the N2. That section of roadway through the Eastern Cape currently blocked by protesters. We'll keep an eye on that situation as we get over the next few hours. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes, 7 minutes after 6. Good to have you along with us this Monday morning. So much going on at the moment, and so much of it, I suppose, about politics. And why would we be surprised that so much of it is about politics? But away from all of that, I'm hoping you've been able to, chill a little bit. I was doing some chilling yesterday. Not really chilling on Saturday, I won't lie. All sorts of other things going on. I think people also sort of just getting into the groove. I don't know if you've noticed, it's been very hot lately. That there's just a little bit, depending where you are, of course, just a little bit of a sort of slight at night, sometimes a slight chill in the air. And my daughter was saying to me yesterday, Dad, we're officially in autumn. I was like, you're kidding. But, officially, we are in autumn. I don't know if you feel that in Uppington today. Probably not. But certainly we are technically, officially, whatever the word is, in autumn. Anyway, I suppose people will make all sorts of jokes about winter. But anyway, the elections over the weekend, big political weekend. The PAC, the Freedom Front Plus, the UDM, all having their big manifesto launches. The ANC also having a big meeting today. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But just to let you know, obviously we're trying to do all of the election manifestos as we go. We thought about having a sort of big hour with all three of the parties that did theirs today, but thought actually probably better to do them sort of each one on a separate day. We'll do the UDM later. We'll hear from the PAC and the Freedom Front Plus through the week. Very tempting, of course, to put them together because they want such different things. But that's our society at the moment, isn't it? So the UDM making big promises yesterday. The Freedom Front Plus, the PAC doing the same. The Freedom Front Plus saying that they believe that their sort of big campaign is going to be the Stop the Plunder of SA. They used the word plunder. Talk about building the economy, stopping black economic empowerment and stopping the NHI. They also said that government should play less of a role in our society, a sort of smaller role in your life is kind of the idea. The PAC, which I think is very different views, they want to Africanize the legal system. They want to make sure that young people have a fair chance. They want to build a functioning society. I didn't see much from the coverage of the PAC election manifesto about land, but I presume that is still a big issue for them. They're also making their point they're going into this election as a united force. The PAC had all sorts of problems around divisions for a long time. Those seem to be sorted out now. And some of the people who were sort of involved in the divisions, I think, were actually at the big conference, the big sort of gathering over the weekend. Then Bantu Holomisa for the UDM. The general saying they'll end load shedding, they'll have clean government, they would fight crime. He attacked the ANC as well and said the ANC won't act against those implicated in state capture. And he also said that for Eskom there'll be a sort of public-private partnership. I'm not entirely sure how that would work. There have been various sort of suggestions of things like that sort of in the past. The ANC, they've got a big meeting. It starts today. We kind of know that it's starting. They haven't said officially what it's about, but we kind of know that it's really about whether or not those who are implicated in state capture and those who have findings against them from the Zondo Commission will in fact be allowed on the electoral list. In other words, will they be allowed to represent the ANC or not in National Assembly, in Parliament, in provincial legislatures, things like that. I said about a week ago, I said this could be an issue, or the issue of the election. We will see if I'm right. I mean, maybe it won't be, but let's see. I think it's going to be a big issue. The Integrity Commission says that these people should not represent the ANC. So does the Veterans League. It's a very, very complicated and important story, and I think it's going to be very interesting. Rand Water. Now, there are a couple of things going on with water at the moment. Firstly, the sort of high-level stuff. Rand Water says it's reducing the supplies it gives to two councils by 20%. In other words, there are going to be big knock-on effects there. The councils are Merafong in Gauteng and Nkwate, which is in the Free State. Now, Nkwate owes 63 million rand. There have been big problems there. Merafong owes 801 million rand to Rand Water. Now, I have to ask you this question. Do you think Merafong can pay back 801 million rand to Rand Water? I see one person looking at me already and shaking their head, and I have to agree. I think it's going to be very difficult. And what Rand Water says is that they've been in conversations with these two councils, and there's just endless negotiations. Nothing ever gets sorted out. Then in Joburg, specifically, Joburg Water, so different to Rand Water, had a lightning struck at the Aikenhof substation, which supplies its pumping station, which means that it cannot get enough water to the reservoirs, which supply, well, large parts of the city. Places, like Soweto, places like parts of sort of Blairgowrie, Ramberg area, the centre of the CBD, they're having huge knock-on effects at the moment as well. And so big issues there. It's going to be, I think, a difficult sort of water week, as we sometimes have. And as I say, still quite warm, even though, as my daughter says, it's very much the beginning of autumn. And at eThekwini, still consequences from that SAMWU strike, the municipal strike. I didn't realise some schools were closed because there was no water in the Waybank. Is it Waybank? Waybank area. W-Y-E, is that Waybank, in that area. And the city actually says there's been vandalism of water facilities there. I mean, and that's serious. Who does that with water? That's very serious. There are other stories this morning. Two of our soldiers died in the DRC. Just this came through late on Friday, and they died, it seems, in a very strange incident. One killed the other and then shot themselves, a sort of what's called a murder-suicide. And, of course, we saw the other two soldiers who died in that mortar attack earlier. There are big questions about what's happening in the DRC. Very complicated situation there. Becky Clearly, the DA making a lot about the police minister. They say that a private company paid for his flight to the Rugby World Cup final and for his wife. But the personal assistant was paid for by the government to the tune of 184,000 rand, which seems like a large amount of money. And I don't think it was even a first-class flight. It was business class, but that's a huge amount of money. So, yeah, very interesting to see how that one develops. And then I should just remind you and tell you this because I've mentioned it once or twice, but Depaul Peters, who's the Minister of Small Business Development, she's been suspended for a month by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And this follows a finding by Parliament. Remember, Parliament's ethics committee made a finding against her for her role when she was the Transport Minister at PRASA. And so she's been suspended from Parliament for a month. Now she's been suspended as Deputy Minister for a month as well. I'm not entirely sure when it all started, whether she's sort of suspended for this month or whether she was suspended for last month at Parliament. But anyway, she's been suspended by the President for a month. As always, lots to talk about this morning. You know the number 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet SAFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. You send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning. Nice to have you along this Monday morning. I sense in my waters, in my bones, in my spirit that it's going to be a busy week. Let's see if I'm right. Just gone 6:15.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Madupi Makhalemela, good morning.
A very good morning to you, Stephen. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Good weekend. How was yours?
Lovely, nice and chilled, relaxed.
Oh, really? Okay,
yes.
Cool. What's coming up today?
Lots of stories we're looking at. A big one today is the Competition Commission will today start with its media and digital platforms market inquiry in Sunnyside, Pretoria, which will be chaired by the Chief Economist James Hodge. Now, the Commission says that the inquiry will focus on examining the distribution of media content on South Africa's digital platforms and the advertising technology markets that connect buyers and sellers.
It's fascinating to watch this play out. It really has a big impact on our lives, this
Absolutely, especially us in our industry, of course. Another one is closing arguments in the Senzo Meyiwa trial within a trial. They're expected to be heard this morning at the High Court in Pretoria. As we know, 5 men are on trial there for the murder of the Bafana captain who was shot dead in October 2014. And I don't know if you heard in our news at 5, the U.S. goes before the UN General Assembly later today to explain its use of the veto in the Security Council weeks earlier, blocking a demand for a ceasefire following the ICJ's provisional measures on Israel.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge story.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are just some of the stories we'll be looking at, Stephen.
Madupi Makhalemela, thanks very much indeed. 16 minutes now after 6.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thundershowers 17 and 31. Johannesburg, partly cloudy, isolated showers and thundershowers 15 and 29. Vereeniging, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thundershowers 15 and 30. Bombela, morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy, isolated showers, thundershowers in the afternoon 19 and 31. Polokwane, partly cloudy, 18 and 30. Mahakeng, fine, becoming partly cloudy towards the afternoon, windy with isolated afternoon showers and thundershowers 20 and 31. Vryburg, partly cloudy and windy, isolated showers and thundershowers 16 and 34. Mangaung, partly cloudy and windy, becoming cloudy towards the afternoon, scattered afternoon showers and thundershowers 14 and 30. Kimberley, partly cloudy and windy, scattered afternoon thundershowers 15 and 34. Uppington, partly cloudy and windy, isolated showers and thundershowers 16 and 31. You are feeling the chill in Uppington. Cape Town, cloudy, widespread showers, thundershowers, a moderate northwesterly wind 17 and 25. George, cloudy, becoming partly cloudy, isolated thundershowers in the afternoon, a light easterly wind 16 and 26. Gqeberha, partly cloudy, scattered showers, thundershowers, a moderate to fresh easterly 20 and 26. East London, partly cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers, a moderate northeasterly wind 19 and 28. Netaquini, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thundershowers in the afternoon, a moderate to fresh northeasterly 21 and 31. Richards Bay, partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh northerly 22 and 35. And Pietermaritzburg, morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers 18 and 35.
For credible and comprehensive coverage of South Africa's fast-moving mining industry and the people shaping it, click through to Creamer Media's Mining Weekly. From policy and innovation to market-moving trends, Creamer Media's Mining Weekly keeps your finger on the resources pulse. For even deeper insight, subscribe to our New Look weekly magazine, out every Friday, together with engineering news. Creamer Media's Mining Weekly. Current, credible, comprehensive.
Fly better to your next holiday. Book your flights with Emirates to a holiday in Dubai, London, Istanbul, or Paris. Look forward to delicious regionally inspired cuisine, enjoy free-flowing premium drinks, and relax to your favorite movies on the way. Because it's not just about the destination, it's how you get there. This year, fly Emirates. Fly better.
Mzansi Afrika! All roads lead to FNB Stadium on Saturday, 9 March for the Soweto Derby. And we want you to be part of it. SABC Sport and Vodacom are giving you a chance to win your share of 30 double tickets. That's not all. As a Buccaneer or Corsi fan, you can also win double jerseys of Orlando Pirates or Kaizer Chiefs for you and your friend. To enter this exhilarating giveaway, head over to sabcsport.com and visit the competition page. Entries close on Tuesday, 5 March 2024. T's and C's apply. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international news.
20 minutes after 6 in the Middle East, Israel has refused to attend a peace conference with Hamas in Cairo after Hamas refused to give it a list of hostages that it's holding who are still alive. This means that for the moment, the Israeli offensive in Gaza continues, even though it appears pressure is building on Israel to agree to some kind of deal and to end its actions in Gaza. Meanwhile, the situation in the Red Sea that's seen Houthi groups attacking ships passing through that area has now claimed a major casualty. After a ship attacked by the groups is now sunk, this means it could be much more dangerous for ships to pass through that area. The Houthis say that they are carrying out attacks on ships that they believe could be part of the aid or trade with Israel. Timothy Walker is a maritime project leader and senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies. Timothy, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to all your listeners.
The Ruby Mar was attacked several weeks ago. It's now sunk. Does this pose any kind of risk for shipping in that area? And of course, if more ships are sunk, I imagine the risks would
Indeed, there's a slight risk from what's called the submerged nature of the ship at the moment. The water there where it's sunk is a little deeper than the draft of the vessel, so vessels would pass over it. But given that it's the attack, when the attack occurred at the narrowest point, and at the time it has, there'll be a lot of risk or a lot more recalculations of vessels actually passing through the area again.
So if, say, 2, 3, 4 more ships were sunk in that area, it starts to become a real problem.
A real problem, especially if it is a case where there's like the ship did this time around, drifting along for several days, sinking or submerged. What really matters in this regard then is the salvaging or the repairing or the pulling away of the vessel to a port nearby. There's not many vessels in the area which could salvage a vessel like this, take it to a port in the area and remove it from risk of sinking or causing more obstacles as well. And that's something which the Houthis, I think, are very aware of as well. That it only takes one or two of these attacks to really, once again, basically close the strait to international navigation.
If they close the strait to international navigation, does that strangely weaken or strengthen the Houthis? Because it would mean people would go around, they'd come around southern Africa. If everybody just made the decision to do that, could the Houthis have overplayed their hand, or could it actually really strengthen them?
I think for the time being there might be a recalculation, but there'll always be a pressure on charterers, on shipping owners to try and basically run the risk. The need sometimes I think the economic priority of getting the shorter route, of not going in or setting in for a long-term pattern of sailing around the Cape, is becoming what has always been a very important pressure. But we've seen that already. There were several vessels, not maybe the Rubimar, but other ones who are already looking to take the Red Sea route again, despite their chartering or their owning companies saying that we're prepared to take the longer route around the Cape. So there'll always be that pressure, and I think they know that as well. That's one of the paradoxes here as well, is that for some shipping companies or flags or owners, there's a need still to press on through and run the risk, and there'll always be a couple of vessels doing that. And remember, the Rubimar as well is not what we might call a high priority target compared to other ones. The big priority targets are still going to be the cargo containers, and those will go around the Cape, whereas the Rubimar being a product or a dry goods and cargo of that kind of nature is something which the value of it is not very high for insurance rates. So they will continue to say, well, there's no point really sort of taking this longer route. Let's carry on. But that's not going to, let's say, a broad kind of attitude among the shipping companies.
We've seen the US trying to stop these Houthi attacks. You've told us before it's probably impossible for them or very difficult for them to do that. If a peace deal is signed between Hamas and Israel, or either way, if the Israeli offensive in Gaza stopped, let me put it like that rather, would that end the situation?
That's the $64,000 question. That is the key thing I think we need to focus on here. That from the signals I'm getting, I'm sure many listeners as well are, that a ceasefire does seem to be on the horizon at last, and that the policies, I think, and the practices of the Houthi over the last couple of years then becomes very important to study. And what happens, I think, becomes very obvious when you do that, is that the Houthi have often used the threat of maritime insecurity or environmental damage as a bargaining chip. Now, there's a very, very significant case of what's called the Safa, the very large, millions of barrels of oil on board a vessel, which is basically moored offshore in Yemen, in the Houthi-controlled areas. And it's where a lot of oil is processed on shore, or used to be, and then put on board. And unfortunately, in the course of the civil war, it became neglected, in danger of sinking or having a massive explosion, which would have caused a massive environmental damage, far surpassing anything that most people are familiar with. And there was a kind of a willingness to use that as a bargaining chip in negotiations. Say, we'll let that sit because it's not going to blow up, but let's talk politics. And this is kind of what's occurring again. So I don't think that there's an interest anymore in just sticking to from the past, the situation in Gaza. There's tremendous political leverage and gains you can get from continuing with a kind of a maritime disruption, which isn't going to cease.
In the meantime, we've seen more ships coming through our area. I think it's called our exclusive economic zone. There was a report yesterday of our chief of the Navy in the Sunday Times complaining that Arms Corps couldn't fix our Navy ships. Are there actions we need to take with this sort of increased international shipping coming through? I mean, two things. We need to protect our coastline, but do we need to protect those ships as well?
I think the South Africa, basically for centuries, well, since certainly over the last couple of decades, sees itself as the guardian of the Cape Route. And what we see often when we look at maps of the maritime area is that South Africa has a tremendous international responsibility for search and rescue over an area which stretches almost down to Antarctica and includes neighbouring countries like Madagascar or Namibia. And the Navy is one of the primary ways, or those vessels are going to be the primary way to reach ships which are in distress. The more ships which are coming around the Cape, the more likely there might be some kind of accident or safety issue. It's a multi-government task in terms of coordination and search and rescue. But the Navy is absolutely crucial in that regard. And guarding the coast, in a sense, and there's a Coast Guard, but guarding the coast is always going to be a priority. And the Navy has a tremendous role to play in that. And it's worrying that it's not. It's been talking about this way it's sort of self-diagnosis for years, but it's really, really putting an emphasis now and being very candid on just how degraded our own capabilities have become. And I think that if this doesn't serve as a call to elicit more support for not just the Navy, but the maritime industry in South Africa, refueling ships, improving the efficiency of ships calling in at ports in Durban and Cape Town, then I'd be quite worried for the future.
Timothy Walker, thank you. Maritime Project Leader and Senior Researcher at the Institute for Security Studies.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Cape Town Spurs.
Well, big winners this weekend. This is the latest round of action in the DStv Premiership. Their scoreline there, 2-0 against TS Galaxies. As it stands, Spurs remain at the bottom of the table, 3 points behind Richards Bay FC, who suffered a 2-1 loss against Royal AM over the weekend. Now, there was plenty of lightning and thunder between Kaizer Chiefs and Swallows, but no goals scored there, no fireworks, 0-0 was how that match ended. And Orlando Pirates won, Polokwane City 0. Elsewhere, Phil Foden scored twice, and that was in the second half as Manchester City came from behind to beat Manchester United 3-1 at the Etihad Stadium. And Bayer Leverkusen, they tightened their grip at the top of the Bundesliga with a 2-0 victory over 10-man Cologne to pull 10 points clear of Bayern Munich. And rugby action, where the Springbok Sevens team completed the HSBC Sevens Los Angeles on a positive note. They outplayed Canada 28-15 to finish in 11th place of 12, and 4 tries, 2 in each half, gave the South Africans a big enough lead to survive a late Canada onslaught. The first of those were scored by Zane Davids in the opening minute of the match when Ryan Oosthuizen dotted down soon after the Blitzboks were in control, leading 14-0 at the break. Here's their coach, Sandile Ngobo.
I think our mental prep and just fighting for consistency. That's why I say I'm not angry but more frustrated, because we showed glimpses of us being able to put teams away and putting those teams away in the first half. And unfortunately, this is a game of 2 halves where we let teams come back that don't deserve to actually beat us. So we'll have to look at the detail and fighting for that consistency, putting a good game together and putting good passages of play together for the end result.
And finally, golf. Chile's Joaquin Niemann, he won the Golf Jeddah Invitational by 4 shots. South Africa's Louis Oosthuizen and Charles Schwartzel were tied for second. We'll bring you more sport on Sunrise. More at the top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. You're with SFM leading the conversation. We'll talk to Rand Water in the next half an hour. No load shedding for the moment. Stage 2 later, 6:30.
A very good morning with the news headlines. The defense in the case of the 2 men arrested in Eswatini for the murder of rapper Keenan aka Forbes and Tebello Muzwani says they are yet to receive a comprehensive application for the extradition process. IFP leader Velenkosini Hlabisa has called on South Africans to go to the polls on the 29th of May in large numbers and give the ANC government a red card for its failure to tackle unemployment, load shedding, and crime. And US Vice President Kamala Harris says people in the Gaza Strip are starving and has called on Israel to do more to increase the flow of aid into the territory. And those are your headlines. A full news update at 7.
SAFM guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. The Mopani Highway, Gibina Pretoria, very slow this morning. It has been since about 5:30. Just traffic queuing from Theo Martins around the bend all the way down to Esky and Pathlali. Still no traffic lights on Roger Dyson coming out of the industrial side of Pretoria. Very slow down towards the faulty junction at the R101. Joburg's N1's under some pressure from four ways, just queuing up as you get up towards the Ravonia Road off-ramp, and a collision on the N12 coming out of Alberton at the N3 Ilan's interchange. Traffic already pushing back to Four Tracker Road. Bit of protesting on the go at Ek Industria. That's just north of Bronkhorstspruit this morning. If you're in that Ek Industria, the main road there, the 568, is likely to be disrupted. We are getting some reports of protesting along the N11 route this morning near the Plattsburgh exit. If you know where that is, there are some burning tyres across that section of the N11 in KZN. There's also a big stationary truck on the M7 going in towards Pinetown. It's a container truck stuck in the left lane before the N3, and that's quite a heavy early queue this morning for Pinetown bound traffic, parking all the way back towards Hunt Stepman Highway. The N2 South looks like something's probably broken down before Spaghetti Junction, or crashed maybe. The N2 unusually backed up heavily from Inanda Road through towards Spaghetti Junction territory. And Cape Town, still no lights on the M7 R300, so those routes out of Mitchell's Plain are busy. And just watch for some sand at Baden Powell, but Monwabisi, Bottom and more sand after strong winds over the weekend around the Coastal Park area between Strandfontein and Muizenberg. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ray Machlaka, good morning.
Good morning. Hi there.
Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Well, both markets are mostly down. The investor focus is on the US economy. Data from the US shows that manufacturing activity in the country fell in February, and consumer sentiment about the economy also fell. So investors now expect the US central bank to start cutting interest rates from June to boost the world's largest economy before the US market opens later today. The US futures market is down, and Nasdaq, Dow Jones and S&P futures are each down 0.2%. In Asian markets, Japan's Nikkei is up 0.4%. China's Shanghai Composite is up 0.2%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng is down 0.1%. And in the currency market, there is a bit of strength in the dollar to the rand. The local currency is 19.09.
And then fourth quarter GDP data expected this week.
Yeah, that's a big one. Data showing how the economy performed in the last 3 months of 2023 will be published on Tuesday or tomorrow by Statistics South Africa. The data will also show how the economy performed for the entire 2023. The year 2023 was tough for South Africa's economy. During the year, there were unprecedented levels of Eskom blackouts. The logistics crisis in the hands of Transnet worsened, and consumer spending was in the doldrums because of high interest rates, smothering inflation and joblessness. Economists at Nedbank and FNB expect the economy to have grown by a paltry 0.5% in 2023.
And business confidence data for the first quarter of the year also expected, probably pretty gloomy.
Indeed, the Bureau for Economic Research and Rand Merchant Bank track consumer confidence levels through an index. This index measures how consumers feel about the state of the economy and their finances. On Wednesday, the Consumer Confidence Index for the first 3 months of 2024 will be published. It will give clues about whether consumers feel confident or pessimistic about economic conditions in 2024. When consumers feel pessimistic, they tend to not spend money in the economy.
Ray Machlaka, thank you. Ray, of course, back with us in an hour's time. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Rust Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you from the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA. Good morning. All right. Russ Advocate, are you with us? I think you are. In North Kivu, the SADC Army chief visited the Eastern DRC over the weekend. All right. We seem to have lost Sipho Mantula there. Sorry about that. Try and get him on a different line for you just to understand what's happening, but certainly important conversations around what happened in the DRC over the weekend. Some of them, of course, very important conversations. All right. He's with us now. Russ Advocate, there you are. Good morning. In North Kivu, the SADC Army chief visiting the Eastern DRC.
Stephen, a very important meeting of the SADC Army chiefs. As you know, that it was the first coordination meeting since they have sent the troops in December 2023. They went to the strategic town of Sake in Goma. This is the capital city of the North Kivu. This is a very important meeting, like I said, Stephen. Both Burundi troops are also with the SADC troops there to just do what we call a scan of how they should deal with the M23 rebels. Now, this meeting, the ordinary people in Goma, Stephen, they were very confident with this SADC mission in the DRC and this visit, that it is very important for them so that they can engage with the civilians. It was level as what they call high-level meeting in the city of Goma over this weekend.
And then in Chad, the interim president, Mahamat Debi, confirming his candidacy.
He's confirming, Stephen, they are going for the elections in May. Now, he's under what they call a United Chad Coalition. He has been confirmed by a group of 200 parties that have confirmed the son of the late President Idris Deby Itno, who was killed in 2021. Now, it shows that Stephen, from being a military junta, is now going to be a civilian president. We'll wait and see, Stephen, but everything is back in Chad now. As you know, that last week we spoke about internet shutdown. Now they are back with their internet, and Idris Deby is now going for the elections as a presidential candidate for United Chad Coalition.
And in Liberia, there's a big establishment for a war and economic crimes court. Is this a bit like the TRC?
That is quite true, Stephen. It is like a TRC process that has happened before there. But why are they pushing this in Parliament this week? There's a visit coming from the U.S. ambassador who deals with global criminal justice, Beth Van Schaack, who will be visiting the country in this week. So they are going to be tabling this as well as to deal with the post-TRC matters that happened in Liberia. Remember those times of Charles Taylor and now President Joseph Boakai pushing by all means that they need to set up this war and economic crimes court so that they don't have to rush to the ICC. But I think also they have to strengthen the African Court of Justice, because that's where most of the African countries, they are looking for justice in the regional space rather than going to the international court.
And then a bomb scare shutting Zimbabwe's Victoria Falls airport. What happened?
Stephen, on Friday, President Mnangagwa was supposed to address a conference on renewable energy. Now, his media face and voice, George Charamba, saying that the president had to suspend his trip to allow investigation. This has happened by other things. It was the first jet airline where the email was sent by John Doe. This is the name of an alleged person claiming that there's a credible bomb and a firearm threat against Zimbabwe's airports. Now, it appears that Victoria Falls was one of the targets. Hence, Emerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa had to cancel his trip. Remember, it happened also in 2018, Stephen, in Bulawayo, where 2 people were killed when there was a bomb explosion that happened when President Mnangagwa was in his election campaign. Now, they are very careful, Stephen, hence President Mnangagwa had to remain in Harare.
And then in our archives, this day, 4th of March, 1932.
Then I'm taking you back to one who I call the daughter of the fertile soil, the mother of the African continent, who was born on this day. She will have been 92 years old. That is Dr. Zenzile Miriam Makeba, who was born on this day. We know Mama Miriam Makeba went to exile for more than 30 years, Stephen, and she was one of the great women who, when Nelson Mandela was freed in prison in Robben Island in 1990, encouraged Mama Africa to return to South Africa after 31 years in exile. He was a goodwill ambassador for South Africa to the United Nations. We know that his last performance was in Italy in 2008. Very important that he once said that I kept my culture, I kept the music of my roots. Through music, I became this voice and the image of Africa and the people without even realizing. That was a quotable quote of Mama Miriam Zenzile Makeba. Asante sana SG, as was still leading the conversation, SAFM observing the Human Rights Month, also known as the Shavilanga Massacre. Asante sana.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you. And of course, back tomorrow more news from our continent through the day here, 19 minutes to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Voyo on the line from Europe. Nice to know you're listening to us online, Voyo. Hi, you want to talk about our justice system?
Yes, I've got one wish, and I think the only person who will fulfill my wish is my new coming president, Gaten McKenzie.
You're supporting Gaten McKenzie?
That's my president, that one.
All right, from Europe. That's fine, it's your right. Anyway, go on.
I want to suggest, John, I think I've said this before, I wish the justice system in South Africa can work together with traditional healers.
Mm.
There's a guy, I don't want to mention his name, I'm not going to promote him.
Yeah.
There's a guy who's following all these cases, and then on YouTube, he'll give us the feedback. And the things that are saying, I'm telling you, the judges, whoever, cannot say the things that this guy is pulling up from the spirit. Like the sense of dragging boring case, and the little girl that is disappeared, a.k.a. Mastermind. The traditional healers in South Africa, they can tell you exactly where that little girl is. They can tell the police, say, this is the killer, the girl is here.
Yeah.
But justice system cannot find out, and we cannot use it.
Sure.
I don't know why you undermine the power of our sisters.
Voyo, I mean, it's an interesting suggestion. I think it would be quite controversial, and I know that the PAC said over the weekend in their election manifesto we need to Africanize the legal system, and the two might be very different things, but there might be similarities. It's an interesting question, Voyo. I mean, I think in the end it would depend on how effective it is. I mean, if someone says, look, the remains that you're looking for are here, and you find the remains, well, then all well and good. What happens if you don't?
I can tell you now, the powerful healers, they cannot meet the right information.
Yeah.
And in the justice system, they will tell you, there are guys or brothers are sitting there that are honest. They've never done anything, but they're serving life sentences. Because justice system, they are going to pull up the right facts about the person.
All right, Voyo on the line from Europe. Look, it depends. I mean, you've got to hear both sides. You've got to hear the evidence and all the rest. The law does matter. I don't know how much support there'll be for that. There might well be some. Incognito in KwaZulu-Natal. Incognito, I'm not going to ask if that's your first name or your middle name. Hi. You want to talk about the change of seasons?
Yes, Stephen. And I greet you for the first time in this year. Good morning, sir. Yes, sir. I just wanted to concur with what you had said earlier on, and I've got no business to talk about your daughter, but I would like to agree with her 100%. On the 1st of March, which was on Friday, in the early mornings, I witnessed another astrological phenomenon, right? How often do you see shooting stars, if I would ask you the question?
Well, I go to bed too early, but hardly ever incognito.
Yes, sir. So now on Friday the morning, right, from 3:30 until 4 o'clock in the morning, I saw drifting stars for 30 minutes, sir.
Sure.
In one spot. I'm telling you, sir. It was like, when you see an airplane flying, it wasn't like shooting. They were just drifting.
You don't think there were satellites,
directions. It could be. I don't know. I don't know really, but since I was seeing that from the first time, I was so, I don't know how I felt. Because it's like I made many wishes, and I wanted to bring it up on Friday, but since, you get the story of the week, but it was too undated in politics.
Yes.
So this morning, when you said about the change of seasons, I just wanted to bring that up. So yeah.
Incognito, thank you. It's amazing when you see something like that, eh? And you're watching it so often on your own, like you're the only one who sees it.
Exactly. Yeah. I just saw it once, and I just stood there for 30 minutes in one place, one direction, looking at it, you see, and it fascinated me so much. So I wanted to bring it up again.
No.
Good morning.
No, incognito, thank you. And enjoy the privacy of watching that on your own. Maxwell in Tshwane, hi. We've had lots of manifestos this week, and you want to talk about the EFF manifesto, 3 weeks ago?
Yes, Stevens. I think not exactly the one in Gauteng that happened at Dobsonville this weekend.
I think that might have been the PAC. Anyway.
No, they had the gathering in Dobsonville. Julius was there.
They had it. Yes, that's right. That voter registration event. Anyway, go on. Yep.
Yeah, and the promise that he made, for me, I think it's a lot of contradiction from him. Remember, he was the first person to rubbish Amapanyaza as Stephen Grootes.
Yeah.
But on that stadium, he talked very nice about Amapanyaza, that they do have a plan how they can professionalize them. The same guy who criticized them that when he take over the government, then he will chase them. Secondly, it was promised the people of Soweto that the billions that they're owing from ESCOM, he will make sure that all the debt are being squashed also.
Yeah.
So for me, I think those political parties, including what they're promising, it's non-existent. My second point, Stephen, is the issue of coalition. Stephen. And those small political parties that are preaching collusion each and every day because they're benefiting them personal. But as a resident of Pretoria now, Stephen, I don't know if that collusion is working or not because we are suffering. Look at Ekurhuleni, the fist fight that happened there is the collusion. I will support any party that win the election completely without depending to any political party so that when there is problem, Stephen, I will know where to go other than this collusion that is a mess, if you ask me. We don't get any service delivery. Sunnyside, Stephen Grootes, go there. There is filthy, there is a lot of rubbish that is not being collected, but it's under collusion. No, we're tired about this thing, Stephen Grootes, and thanks for taking my call.
Thank you. Maxwell on the line from Tshwane. 12 minutes now to 7.
Get South Africa's best adventure SUV. The new Ford EverSport 2-liter auto bi-turbo 4x2, now from only $14,499 per month with no deposit. With 20-inch alloy wheels and black exterior accents. Get the new Ford EverSport at your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply.
Two champions will collide as EFC returns live this Thursday. Watch the first title defense of flyweight sensation Gift the Day Walker.
Gift Walker takes the tap.
Against the current bantamweight title holder, the legendary Nkazimulu King Shaka Zulu.
All hail King Shaka.
Who aims to join teammate Dricus du Plessis and once more being a two-division champion of Africa. EFC 111 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
11 minutes to 7. Good morning. Well, in Joburg at the moment, low water pressure in many places because a pumping station run by Joburg Water, the Aikenhof pumping station, was without electricity after a lightning strike. Meanwhile, Rand Water, different to Joburg Water, Rand Water says it's going to cut the amount of water it gives to 2 municipalities by 20% because they haven't paid the money they owe. Rand Water says in Khwate municipality in the Free State owes them 63 million. The Merafong municipality owes them 801 million rand. The spokesperson for Rand Water is Makanosi Maru. Makanosi, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to SFM listeners.
What action are you actually taking against Merafong and Nkwate?
Stephen, you are correct. We are being owed over 3 billion by municipalities, including Gauteng, but the small ones. The major one is Gauteng. The small ones are owing about 1 billion. So what we are doing at the moment, we are invoking Section 41 of the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act, and we are declaring a intergovernmental financial dispute. So we are seeking intervention from National Treasury, Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, but obviously also including Department of Water and Sanitation.
Well, okay, but you are actually going to reduce the amount of water you give to these two councils by 20%, is that correct?
That's correct.
Why are you doing it to these two councils and doing it now? Haven't they owed you money, literally, Makanosi, forever?
They have, but we have to start somewhere, Stephen. That's where we're saying this is the beginning of it, and then we'll move to the rest of the municipalities that are owing us.
Okay. I understand that the negotiations between them haven't gone very well. In fact, there are quotes from, I think it's yourself or other officials at Rand Water, that literally the negotiations go nowhere.
That's correct. We've tried several times. We had bilateral engagements. We participated in forums, intergovernmental relations forums, but we could not reach an agreement because we did reach an agreement. They did not honor an agreement. We went back to the drawing board. We had discussions, but nothing actually came through. So we decided to take this route.
Merafong owes you over 800 million rand. I mean, they're never going to be able to pay that, surely.
That's why we are saying to National Treasury, please intervene. As we know that they do get an allocation from National Treasury, we're saying to National Treasury, it must intervene.
Okay. This has been going on for a long time. Are you going to do this to other people as well? I mean, other municipalities, other metros in Gauteng, perhaps?
No, definitely. That's the way that we are planning, Stephen. Hence, we are communicating. We're saying the overdue debt is still outstanding. So we are starting with the 2 municipalities, and then we'll move to other non-performing municipalities.
Okay. So you declare this dispute. Are you hoping the Treasury will maybe pay you directly on behalf of the council? Is that what you think might happen?
That's what we are hoping. But we are open to discussions, obviously, to come up with a solution. But basically what we're hoping is to get money from these municipalities.
Okay. When you reduce the water pressure by 20%, so you reduce the amount of water that flows to Merafong and Nkwate, presumably that then is going to have big impacts on everybody. It won't just impact people who live in low areas or high areas. It will probably impact everybody who lives in those areas. Would that be your understanding? Would that be the correct understanding of it?
That would be correct, Stephen. Yes. It will be for both high areas and low-lying areas.
Makanosi Maru, thank you. Spokesperson at Rand Water, really appreciate the time. Just shows you how big the problems are in our water industry, in our water sector at the moment. 7 minutes now to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
There's a bit of collision on Joburg's N12, eastbound if you like, just where you come onto the N3 at Ilan's interchange. So there's a bit of congestion out of Alberton and Germiston this morning into the interchange up towards sort of cement factory territory. The N1 is super heavy from Bayers Nordier up through Willie Mandela and on towards Ravonia BQs this morning. Willie Mandela coming out of four ways across that highway and down towards Sloane Street. Very busy. It's got the feel that the lights might be out at Willie Mandela and Sloane. It's got that sort of feel about the traffic in that area. But the N1 separately is heavy from Randburg through to Sunning Hill. The Mopali Highway coming into Pretoria stays busy this morning from Brits Road all the way down towards Eskew and Perth Valley. No lights on Roger Dyson at the R101, so motorists again facing another busy run out of the Pretoria industrial site. Now Durban, the N2 South is queuing. I think there's probably a breakdown before Spaghetti Junction is queuing a lot heavier than you'd normally find for this time of morning, coming through from Inanda Road, all backed up into 4 level. The M7 again queuing towards the Bluff. Make sure you've got time to get through that, pushing back towards the Queensbury area. A lot of that to do with the roadworks in that area along Bel-Air Road. Also breakdown on the M7 going into Pinetown, just stuck by Huntstepman, between Huntstepman and the N3, so that's very slow. Hillcrest through to Kloof on the M13 is starting to backlog this morning in towards the sort of Kloof Golf Course area, and the N11 is currently subject to protest action, blockading the road. If you're going out of Ladysmith to Newcastle, it's just by the first Dundee exit, by the 602 exit, just north of that, so maybe you want to delay travel into that area. Nothing getting through at this stage. Cape Town, some sand on Baden-Powell at Monwabisi and also at Coastal Park to be watching out for. And the highways, no major incidents, but it's certainly busy. N1, N2 routes very busy this Monday. And Marine Drive already queuing from Bayside Mall right through to Racecourse Road by the Paddocks. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as 10,000 Hours at the Piano elevates South Africa's teenage pianist Mike Wang to the peak of music. DJ Nilofa Said turns afternoon traffic jams into the best part of your day. And para-athlete Darren Thomas wins hearts, minds, and medals in Miami, USA. That's the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10:30 on S3.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Third-placed VfB Stuttgart understand that only victory will get them close to the top 2 teams on the table. Whereas Union Berlin have a mammoth task to cause an upset away from home. Who will dictate terms at the MHP Arena? This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Experience the German style of the game. VfB Stuttgart FC versus FC Union Berlin on Friday, 8 March at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
4 minutes to 7. Good morning. Well, after another intense weekend of political campaigning, this coming weekend, the IFP releasing its election manifesto in Durban. Last week, King Misizulu Kazwelatini said the murders of traditional leaders, the Amakhosi in KwaZulu-Natal, had to stop. And there have, of course, been concerns about the potential for violence in KZN, particularly, and that was the Water Affairs Minister Stephen Grootes who told us that it was particularly after the launch of the new Mkhonto weSizwe party. Mary de Haas is an expert and an analyst on political violence, been an observer there, and she's at the law school at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Mary, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen and listeners.
Normally we see murders linked to politics in KwaZulu-Natal, usually in sort of local government. It happens often during a local election, happens around intra-party and side-party disputes. Are you expecting something different during what is a provincial election in KwaZulu-Natal now?
I don't think so. I mean, look, a lot of you have to look at the motives of these killings, because sometimes whether they're traditional leaders or whether they're councillors, it's because they've got business interests or they've made enemies in other ways. Okay, because not all of these killings of people in politics are politically motivated. But I mean, even with provincial and national elections, it can get nasty, depending on party dynamics. The 2016 elections, for example, there were a couple of dozen killings, most of them in the ANC because of factionism. So it's very difficult to predict, actually.
How important is the tone that leaders set? So, for example, Julius Malema has said very clearly as EFF leader, his followers must not attack anyone else. They mustn't engage in violence. I'm sure other political party leaders have said or will say the same thing. And yet sometimes there is inflammatory language as well from people who might one day preach peace and one day have a different tone. How important is the tone set by leadership?
Well, obviously, it is important to preach as much peace as possible. But you know what politicians are, forked tongues, and what they say publicly and what goes on behind the scenes, we don't know. All we know is that politicians, their actions speak louder than words very often.
The police, obviously, in KwaZulu-Natal, we've heard analysis from yourself and others before in the past that there's an issue with policing in KwaZulu-Natal. Do you think they're ready to sort of intervene if necessary there?
Look, I mean, it depends. The problem with the policing is that it's actually run operationally by the minister, which is completely unconstitutional, but even nobody seems to care. Okay, now, the provincial commissioner is a very well-trained policeman in operational response. He was in public order policing. I think he's one of those that was properly trained. Now, the question is how much freedom he's got to, because, he wasn't even around in July 21. I think he was on leave. Now, a lot depends, and we know, and I've got a lot of evidence about how the minister will use policing for political purposes. It's been politicized more and more since 2009. That's the biggest problem we're facing, I think, that in some areas, and this is, as I said, it's right through the last, it's been going on for a long time. A lot of the police didn't act in July 21 because they supported Zuma, for example. And a lot depends on local police management. As I said, the provincial commissioner, I think, should, in principle, be good at operational things. The big problem we have, and this is nationwide, the huge problem we have is the virtual annihilation of what's left of proper crime intelligence, also for political purposes, that it's used for political purposes. I think this is the biggest worry. What needs to happen, and this, all parties need to be alert, They must watch the police. The faith-based organisations must please play a role. Local government, local community policing forums, they must watch over the police in their area. They must report any failure to act and any apparent political favoritism. And they must tell the media. The media's got a very important role to play.
Mary de Haas, thank you. An honorary research fellow at the Law School, the University of KwaZulu-Natal, researcher on violence there. You're with SFM leading the conversation just after 7 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Thanks, Stephen. The top stories this hour: AKA's alleged killers yet to be extradited, and a call on South Africans to vote in large numbers. A very good morning to you. The defense in the case of the two men arrested in Eswatini for the murder of rapper Keenan aka Forbes and Tebello Tibbs Mutswane says they are yet to receive a comprehensive application for the extradition process. Siyabonga Ndimande and Malus Ndimande were arrested in Babane 2 weeks ago. A legal representative, Sivesonke Ngwenya, says they will only be able to proceed with the extradition hearing once they've received the full extradition application. The two Ndimande brothers are expected to appear in the Manzini Magistrates Court tomorrow. Mtobi Simkalipi reports.
The two Ndimande brothers, Siyabonga and Malusi, were arrested at a house they were renting in Babane a few weeks ago. They were arrested in connection with 4 cases of murder and attempted murder. It is alleged that after killing AKA and his friend Tebello in February last year, they killed 2 more people in Durban on separate occasions between February and March. The 2 accused made their first appearance in court last week. They will appear again in the same court on Tuesday for a possible start of the extradition process. I'm Tobi Simkalipi in Babane, Eswatini.
Closing arguments in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial within a trial are expected to be heard this morning at the High Court in Pretoria. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain who was shot dead in October 2014. The defense is challenging the admissibility of confession statements allegedly made by accused number 1 and 2. Moses Sibiya and Bongani Ntanzi claimed that they were assaulted and tortured into signing the alleged confession statements. Pumzile Mlangeni has more.
These confession statements are key evidence for the state, which wants the court to admit them in the main trial. The state called several police officers who were present following the arrest of Sibiya and Danzi in May and June 2020 to answer to the assault allegations. Lead investigator Brigadier Bongani Gininda denied there was any torture or assault and claims both suspects made statements freely and voluntarily. The 2 are alleged to be known hitmen as they gathered information around the murder of Meyiwa.
Police say they are processing possible evidence that could be linked to the disappearance of 6-year-old Jocelyn Smith from Saldanha Bay on the west coast. Spokesperson Malcolm Pochie says blood-stained clothing was found in an open field during a random search done by the community on the weekend.
Police has expanded the search for 6-year-old Jocelyn Smith with the dispatching of drone operators as well as rescue dogs, search and rescue dogs in the area. Clothing pieces allegedly stained with blood were discovered in an open field last night. The investigation team descended on the scene where the pieces of clothing were seized as part of ongoing investigations. The clothing will be sent to our forensic laboratory for analysis. The search is continuing. No arrest has been made yet.
On the elections front, IFP leader Velenkosini Hlabisa has called on South Africans to go to the polls on the 29th of May in large numbers and give the ANC government a red card for its failure to tackle unemployment, load shedding and crime. He was addressing a mini rally in KwaMashu in the run-up to the party's national launch of its election manifesto next Sunday in Durban. Hlabisa and other members of the IFP-NEC have been crisscrossing the province to mobilize support for the launch and to check on branches' readiness for the election campaign. Hlabisa says South Africans cannot afford another 5 years of ANC rule.
In 1994,
we stood in long queues for more than 1 day because we were determined that we want to remove the apartheid government that was not helping us. In 2024 is an opportunity for all of us to go to the voting station and stand in long queues to remove the government that has failed us.
Eskom says that load shedding will remain suspended until 4 o'clock this afternoon. Thereafter, Stage 2 will be implemented until 5 a.m. on Tuesday. The planned power cuts will be suspended again from 5 a.m. tomorrow morning until 4 p.m. The alternating pattern of suspending load shedding from 5 a.m. until 4 p.m. and implementing Stage 2 load shedding from 4 p.m. until 5 a.m. will be repeated daily until further notice. Eskom says they will communicate any significant changes. And U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris says the people in the Gaza Strip are starving and has called on Israel to do more to increase the flow of aid into the territory. She repeated President Joe Biden's call for a 6-week ceasefire that would secure the release of hostages kidnapped by Hamas and allow more aid into Gaza.
Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization that has vowed to repeat October 7th again and again until Israel is annihilated. The threat of Hamas poses to the people of Israel must be eliminated. And given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire.
The top story this hour, the defense in the case of the 2 men arrested in Eswatini for the murder of rapper Keenan aka Forbes and Debello Motswane says they are yet to receive a comprehensive application for the extradition process. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemeli.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, United Rugby Championship action saw the Bulls and the Lions. They end on a high. And we also bring you news from golf. Tiger Woods is to resume play today at the Seminole Pro Member Tournament, Juno Beach, Florida. All this and more just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a pretty heavily back to Monday morning, back to work we go on Gauteng's highways. The N1, for example, from John Foster all the way down to a point just after New Road. That's a really heavy N1. The N1 north in Joburg from Vel to Vreden Park all the way through to Rivonia Road. That's a really big snarl up of traffic. Looks like lights are out William Mandela and Sloane. So coming out of four ways, William Mandela badly backed up through the highway and into Bryanston. And a lot of the N1 congestion is a problem getting off of that William Mandela off-ramp, getting off the highway into that serious traffic congestion. N12, Joburg bound, coming out of Benoni, a crash before Atlas Road. Traffic parking back towards Snake Road already as well. Durban, couple of breakdowns, one on the N2 north before the M7 Bluff exit. So that's your first queue. And then you're pretty much straight after the M7 into the queues up through Spaghetti Junction into the work zones. Also a stationary truck before the N3 if you're on the M7 going into Pinetown. N11 blocked just north of Ladysmith near the Dundee exit. That's with some protesting. And if you're driving into Cape Town, the M3 is pretty heavy. It's back beyond the normal Constantia exit, getting back towards Sakai, and a major backlog again this morning on Marine Drive from Sunningdale. Traffic's heavy today all the way through to Racecourse Road at the Paddocks in Milnerton. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
10 after 7, good morning. You with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're along with us this Monday morning. Supposedly, we're now in autumn. I don't know if you're feeling in autumn. I mean, Uppington has a high of 31 degrees today, so I suppose for them, if you're in Uppington this morning, for you, that's probably autumn. But for the rest of the country, still fairly hot at the moment, and of course the water problems in some places making all of that worse. We'll talk a little bit to the UDM in a moment. It's their manifesto launch, doing the different parties' manifestos as they sort of come. Won't do them all on the same day, of course. We'll speak also about Eskom, big issues happening around Eskom at the moment. Your mediated conversation in a little while. Quite looking forward to it, actually. There's been a big issue with two big government buildings. One was the the South African Air Force headquarters in Tshwane. The other was the Telkom Towers building, which is used by the police in Tshwane. Both closed down by the Labour Department. We'll find out how that happens, why that happens. We'll actually speak to an expert on ventilation. I'm looking forward to that conversation around ventilation a little while later, because I think it's going to be quite important. How buildings are cooled down. Have you ever wondered, how do you know if the building you're working in is actually safe? We'll be talking about that. General Bantu Holomisa, he's next. It's 11 after 7.
Introducing a collection of Audi Black and Urban Special Edition models crafted for the bold and curated for the progressive. From the sporty Audi S3 and elegant A4 to the distinctive Q2 and Q3, each vehicle has been created to be an extension of your identity. Style, design, comfort, and technology is yours to own with a guaranteed future value and a competitive monthly installment through Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.za to discover more.
Gauteng MEC for Finance, Jacob Mamabolo, will present the budget to the legislature on the 5th of March at 10 a.m. The MEC will reflect on how public funds were used in the last 5 years to provide services to the people. He will further outline the priorities of the Gauteng government and how the budget will be allocated to support economic growth, create jobs, fight crime, and improve the living conditions of people in the townships, informal settlements, and hostels. This message is brought to you by the Gauteng Provincial Government, growing Gauteng together.
The cost of living crisis is real. Here's what one Outsurance client did about it.
I'm Amy. I'm 26 from Kenilworth. When I got my 2022 Ford EcoSport, the immediate thought was to phone Outsurance, and I pay only 819 Rand per month. No insurers were able to beat or match the premium that I'm currently paying.
Want a car insurance premium that will blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote and to find out about included benefits like panic assistance that sends the nearest medical or armed response unit to you wherever you may be 24/7. Here's Yusuf.
45 years old from Tygeral, Western Cape. I pay 700 Rand for my Polo 1.6 2021 model. If you haven't called Outsurance yet, definitely get in touch.
Give it a go. SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
13 minutes after 7, good morning. Well, over the weekend, at least 3 political parties launching their manifestos. The Freedom Front Plus, the UDM, the PAC, all holding big events. Obviously, during the course of the election, you'll hear as many of the parties as we can get. We won't do them all on the same day, of course. Well, for the UDM, the party's leader, General Bantu Holomisa, promising that the United Democratic Movement would end load shedding. It would ensure there was clean governance. It would fight crime. Those are some of the promises it's making. Well, the leader of the party, General Holomisa, is on the line for you now. Mr. Holomisa, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning to our listeners.
What are the main points of your manifesto?
Our main points in our manifesto is that South Africa is in crisis and that we need to close ranks as South Africans and it be involved in dialogue. High on the agenda of such a dialogue would be to talk about the economy, the land, the crime, the unemployment, and so on. So we have outlined our manifesto is contained in our website, www.udm.org.za. But I'm ready to take any question.
Okay. You say you would end load shedding. What would you actually do? I mean, what would you do differently to what's already been done?
I said, in order, first of all, to talk about ending load shedding, we need to approach other people, other countries where we have bilateral agreements to come and assess the situation of our energy in this country, because the ANC government has not been telling us the truth. We don't know the exact reason for this load shedding. Sometimes you are told the coal is wet, sometimes a certain station has tripped and this and that. All this, almost 16 years, we've been told different stories. So we need to, therefore, ask the other countries who have experience on this and advise so that we can take a decision from an informed position as to how do we fix our energy. But in the meantime, we must not discard the possibility of looking at our energy mix where we can talk about generating our electricity. But the key for moving away from fossil fuels to renewable energy is that we will have to suspend some of the monies which were addressing some backlogs and imbalances of the past related to socio-economic problems. In that, we will have to now invest on putting a new transmission equipment from generation to transmitting and also up to municipality level for distribution. It's not going to be cheap.
Okay. One of the major points of your manifesto is helping young people. And if you look around, I mean, I think they're actually amazing. I think it's much harder to be a young person than it was for my generation, which is crazy. Youth unemployment is incredibly high. What would you do for young people?
Like the Afrikaners did when they ascended to power in some decades ago, the UDM is proposing that we must establish a distinct fund so as to make sure that we allow the youth or train the youth to be entrepreneurs, to be wealth creators, so that they can employ other people instead of saying to them, go and join the queue of 60 million plus to go and look for jobs from companies which are owned by merely 3 million white population. We have to invest in the majority citizens of this country. The BE, didn't work well. And even those who managed to be in the BE are controlling nothing. And they have no say. Instead, they have been used to get government tenders by those who were oppressing us in the past.
Okay, would you scrap BE?
No. We are not going to scrap the BE, but it needs a little bit of improvement here and there because it only focuses on middle class. The rest of the population is languishing in poverty.
Sure. You say you support clean government and that you believe we must fight corruption. I think all the political parties are saying that, but I think it must also be said, General. And for a long time, and I'm sure you're going to fight with me on this, but for a long time you supported Mongameli Bobani. He was the deputy mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, and he's passed now, so I don't want to talk ill of him, but the Hawks were investigating him. At one point, I think they raided his house. Do you have any regrets over what happened during that time? I mean, some people suggested at the time that maybe that it cost you some electoral support. I don't know if that's true. How do you see it?
The thing I said at the time was that if DA has proof that this person they were accusing, they have evidence, they must take Bobani to the council. And the ethics committee of the council should attend to that. Or alternatively, they must go to the Hawks, which they did. We never interfered in that process. So I don't regret because we reminded them about taking the correct procedure. And it is still working like now. For instance, are you going to say to me, in Pretoria, the DA which was caught trying to steal 12 billion and another 10 billion, and then you say those people, you accuse them. The best thing is to follow the law which is governing everybody in this country.
General Bantu Holomisa, thank you. Leader of the United Democratic Movement, one of the three parties, at least three parties, who launched their election manifesto over the weekend. 20 minutes after 7.
The Eagles are
understand how crucial maximum points are as they rapidly want to climb up the ladder of the Premier League.
Jordan whips in once more. Richards at the back post! Carissa Richards has broken the deadlock at Selhurst Park!
But the Hatters know that they need something magical to escape from danger.
Forward run from Chong, deflection of Bene's header, and the Hatters lead. What a noise from the away end, the Kop end is stuck.
Experience the Premier League encounter between Crystal Palace FC and Luton Town FC on Saturday 9 March at 4 p.m. live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Plus, you get 40,000 Rand cashback. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Visit your nearest Kia dealership for a test drive. T's and C's apply.
Kia, movement that inspires.
MasterChef, the biggest, most loved culinary TV show on the planet, is coming to S3. This fresh, local version of MasterChef South Africa will kick up a storm on S3 for the first time in 2024. Enter on www.masterchefsa.tv and start prepping for the opportunity to win R1 million and the prestigious title of Mzansi's new MasterChef. Entries close on the 15th of March. Channel a Better You only on S3. Open up.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
22 after 7, good morning. It's now emerged a report into Eskom by a group of German experts for a company called VGBE shows that Eskom's management system doesn't work effectively and that there's a risk that if water purifications plant fail, and one in particular, we would be pushed into, well, stage 13 load shedding. The one water purification plant supplies water to 2 power stations, the Medupi and Matimba power stations. There are others which may be endangered too, and it appears that other water purification plants at those power stations could fail. Hugo Creer is a civil energy expert, nuclear engineer, and he works for the organisation Truth and Energy. Hugo, good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
This report was conducted for the National Treasury. Some of the headlines appear quite frightening. Is there anything new in the report we didn't know before?
This report confirmed exactly what many engineers and many critiques of Eskom have said in the past. Eskom is not an engineering challenge. From an engineering perspective, these problems are solvable. The report speaks to the core issue, and I encourage everyone to read it, to go to page 60, where they said the main root cause for the low energy availability factor is the dysfunctional management system of Eskom. It's characterized by inefficient processes, especially procurement, a lack of authority and opaque decision-making structure. That is the root cause of load shedding. Everything else which you just described, if the plants break down and stuff of that nature, those are solvable problems from an engineering perspective. They can be solved within, depending on which plant you target, 18 months to 3 years, but then you need an empowered team and you need people to know what they're doing. But to do that, you need to solve the top as much as you want to solve the bottom. And we've never spoken to the top in the processes. And finally, this report puts it now in stone. The government can no longer ignore it, even though they suppressed this information, tried to suppress it for almost 6 months.
There's a new CEO, Dan Marikane. It just started on Friday, as it happens. I mean, this is not something that a CEO on their own can fix. The board would need to do it. And I presume if you've got sort of opaque decision-making structures where it's not clear who actually makes a decision, there are lots of people who can interfere in the process. If you try and push them out or to one side, there'll be a lot of opposition.
That is correct. And you see the report, the root cause analysis was instituted by Toyota when it became a successful, but made Toyota a successful company. And the boss at the time, forgot his name, came with what was called the 5 whys. You need to ask why. And at the fifth time, you know the root cause. This report, in my view, goes to the 4th why. It doesn't go to the 5th why. The 5th why is then a opaque procurement management system of Eskom. Let's start at the top of Eskom. You've got 3 ministers. Minister Gordhan sets the board, Minister Mantashe sets the policies, and Minister of Electricity does the work of the executive, which I'm not even sure if that is entirely legal. Okay, so you already have a problem of too many cooks at the top. Then you have NECOM, which the president constituted, that is a sort of a form of executive overreach. All of those structures, and this report speaks to that as well, have to be unbundled. You need one minister. He needs to appoint a board. The board needs to appoint the executive, which is now Dan Morokani, and he's a competent man. He's a chemical engineer. And then he needs to be left alone to execute his mandate, obviously with the support of Treasury, because Eskom is bankrupt. That is what the root cause of load shedding is. Eskom is obviously not ISO 9001 compliant. I would like to know, and I'm going to file a PIAC request, who certified them, because clearly they're not doing quality control. So there's many red flags that needs to be resolved, but it can only be resolved if you have policy certainty and political support. But also, this means, and it's a much bigger issue for the ANC in particular, that they will need to give concessions as to how they fund their election campaigns. Because in particular, one issue that I've been speaking out against is DMIE should not be doing tenders or the IRP at all. That should be the function of Eskom system operator and the executive. You can't have somebody outside of Eskom doing tenders and then calling it independent power providers and forcing Eskom to buy these deals, whether or not it's against their business interest. And then, so you've got a mess at the top, just to summarize it. And then we are surprised that there's a mess at the bottom and that you have unions rebelling and you've got all these kind of issues. So all of those things need to now be restructured. And I give all my support to Dan Morokani, but unless Mantashe and the minister and the president, everyone at the top, is going to support him and going to admit their mistakes, he's going to be another Andre Reuter.
Hugo Creer, thank you very much indeed, from the organisation Truth and Energy, an energy analyst. 27 minutes after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Big rugby matches over the weekend.
The Vodacom Bulls, they had such a win. Well, they ended a 7-game losing streak to the Stormers. 40-22 was the scoreline. And then the Lions beat the Sharks 40-10, heading into a 2-week pause in the Vodacom URC. Now, following the weekend's action, Leinster, they remain at the summit of the standings on 44 points, while the Bulls, they move up to one spot above, second on 40. Stormers denied even a losing bonus point at Loftus. They slipped out of the top 8 to 9th. The Lions are still in 11th spot, but they trail the men from Cape Town by just 1 point, as the Sharks, they languish at the foot of the table after 10 defeats from 11 matches. Now in the SA Shield, the Bulls overtake the Stormers to lead the charge on 20 points after 5 derbies. The final round of SA derbies will bring an end to the league phase of the competition. Now, when the URC returns, it will return on the weekend of the 22nd and 23rd of March. The Sharks will host Ulster at Kings Park. The Lions will tackle Connacht in Galloway. The Stormers will face Edinburgh in Cape Town, and the Bulls, they'll travel to the Welsh outfit Dragons. Soccer action, Cape Town Spurs, one of the biggest winners during the latest round of the DStv Premiership fixtures. They had a 2-0 victory against TS Galaxy. The Urban Warriors made it 2 wins in a row in the league this weekend. Now, as it stands, Spurs remain at the bottom of the table, 3 points behind Richards Bay FC, who suffered a 2-1 loss against Royal AM over the weekend. Now, TP Mazembe coach Lamine Die hopes to avoid Mamelodi Sundowns from here onwards as the club targets CAF Champions League glory. After 6 matches in Group A, the Brazilians finish above their DR Congo counterparts when they beat them 1-0, and that was at the Lucas Moripa Stadium. Although the two sides have already booked their spot in the quarterfinals, CAF is set to conduct the draw for the last 8 on the 13th of March, and of course, Sundowns are the favourites. Elsewhere, Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta confirming that Thomas Partey is fit to return to the squad for tonight's Premier League game at Sheffield United as the Gunners chase a first league title since 2004. The Ghanaian is due to make his first appearance since October after training with the team over recent weeks following a thigh injury that sidelined him for 4 months.
Thomas had a session before the game, the last game, and now he's done 2-3 consecutive sessions, so he should be part of the squad on Monday.
A bit nervous.
And finally, some golf news. Tiger Woods scheduled to play in today's Seminole Pro Member Tournament at the golf club in Juno Beach, Florida. Woods is slated to play with fellow PGA Tour golfer Justin Thomas, the PGA of America CEO Seth Vaugh, and Mike Walrath, who is CEO of the software company Yext. The 15-time major champion is playing the one-day 18-hole event for the first time. More stories on Sunrise Sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks. Thanks very much indeed. Good morning. Plenty to come in the next in a while. We found out about the ANC's big NEC meeting this weekend that could affect the elections. That to come. You with SFM leading the conversation. No load shedding for the moment. Stage 2 later at 6:30.
Thanks, Stephen. A very good morning. With the news headlines, Kemudupi Makhalemele. Residents of Ekangala near Bronkhorstspruit in Gauteng are protesting this morning over water shortages in their area. The aggrieved residents say they've been without water for a month. The defense in the case of the two men arrested in Eswatini for the murder of rapper Keenan aka Forbes and Tebello Motswane say they are yet to receive a comprehensive application for the extradition process. And the storming of the main prison in Haiti's capital Port-au-Prince yesterday has left at least 5 people dead. Details of these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a very busy Monday all over Joburg. It crashed on the M1 North before Rivonia. Traffic is all the way back through to 14th Avenue, so that's effectively Veltevreden Park right through to Stunning Hill, jam-packed. Routes like Malabongwe jamming to get in. Routes like Four Ways, Winnie Mandela, very heavy. Looks like there might be some traffic lights out the other side of the highway at Sloane Street. So William Mandela heavy coming to the highway to get into that crash delay on the M1 North, and then you've got some traffic light problems the other side, and then you've also got a really big delay from Rivonia Road going down the M1 South to off-ramp into that William Mandela traffic. Separately, Vic Hoppen Road from William Mandela across through Main Road and in towards Paulshof is very heavy. It's a real big lot of traffic around Four Ways northern suburbs this morning. Also crashed on the N3 at Heldene, so the N3 N12 routes, Germiston Alberton exits up towards Bedford Slow, and a major delay coming out of Davyton and De Twatwa side towards Benoni. It's a collision on the N12 Joburg bound at Atlas Road, and that traffic all the way back to the almost back to Kingsway. Very heavy backlogs through there. N1 between Brockfontein Interchange and a point just south of New Road remains heavy for motorists driving between Pretoria and Joburg this morning. Protesting just north of Ladysmith on the N11 KZN by the 608. That's the first of the Dundee exits. That section of roadway currently blocked to both directions. May still be an idea to delay your travel there. Also protesting closing a section of the N2 between Mthatha and Dutwa. Motorists and truckers complaining of long queues to get through that section of the N2. Very busy into Cape Town, Stellenbosch, particularly the R44 arriving from Paarl. The Baden-Powell getting up to Adam Tuss and Polka Drive. Even heavy this morning north of Spear. You'll hit some heavy traffic. And major delays coming out of Cape Town's Mitchell's Plain. A crash on the M7 at Highlands Drive. No traffic lights at the R300. Crash further up at Govan and Becky. That's causing a big delay. And then a breakdown on the N7 at the N2. So there's traffic all over that M7 exit from the Mitchell's Plain area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ray Machlaka, good morning. Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
It is US markets that are leading with losses in the current trading session. The investor focus is on the US economy. Data from the US shows that manufacturing activity in the country fell in February, and consumer sentiment about the economy also fell. So investors now expect the US Central Bank to start cutting interest rates from June to boost the world's largest economy before the US market opens later today. The US futures market is down. Nasdaq, Dow Jones and S&P futures are each down 0.2%. In Asian markets, Japan's Nikkei is up 0.4%. China's Shanghai Composite is up 0.2%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng is down 0.2%. And in the currency market, there is a bit of strength in the dollar to the rand. The local currency is 19.12.
And Truworths, they're looking to the UK for growth.
Yeah, Truworths is seeing limited growth in a South African home market. The local retail market is tough, with competition being intense among retailers for a share of consumer wallets. The local economy is also weak, and consumer spending, especially for clothing, is under pressure. So against this backdrop, Truworths says it is looking for growth opportunities in the UK. Truett's already has exposure to the UK market through a footwear retailer called Office, which it bought in 2015. And Truett's CEO Michael Marks says if the retailer were to make an acquisition, it would be in the UK for a fashion retailer.
MTN profit will take a big hit. That's because of issues around Nigeria. Is this getting money out?
Indeed, and currency issues, but Nigeria is MTN's biggest market. In terms of subscriber numbers, it has over 76 million subscribers in the country. Nigeria is also the biggest headache for MTN. MTN has warned investors that its earnings could drop by between 60% and 80% during the year ending December last year. The weakness in Nigeria's currency, the Naira, is mainly to blame for MTN's earnings slump. The Naira has weakened by more than 70% against the dollar since June last year.
Ray Machlaka, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. Ray, of course, back with us tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, lots going on this morning, as you know, and of course, all sorts of different issues. People talking this morning around the different election manifestos that we've seen launched over the weekend. Issues around what the different political parties are saying. Load shedding being a big issue once again. We were talking about Eskom a moment ago. Rand water problems there, and that's often about the situations there with just simple money. So, yeah, all of those questions this morning. 086 000 2032. Voice notes coming through as well this morning. We spoke to Bantu Holomisa earlier, General Holomisa. Comments coming around that.
Morning, Steve. It's Hamilton here. Actually, what Mr. Holomisa is saying is they don't know how will they end load shedding. What they know is, should they get elected, they will start looking for solutions. They'll start going outside and asking countries to come help them. So they must stop saying that they will end load shedding, because they don't know how will they end load shedding. That's Hamilton. A very good morning, Steve.
All right, interesting point. Yeah, okay. I mean, look, ending load shedding is hard. You ask anyone on radio, how are you going to end load shedding? I don't know what kind of response you'll get. Other voice notes.
Morning, Steve. Morning, Mzansi. Well, I'm just bewildered by the selection criteria the open aimers have done in allocation funds for this coming election to political parties. The common denominator, those who don't deal about minerals, those who don't talk about land, those who don't talk about affirmative action, employment equity, are the one who are being prioritized. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, look, there are different ways of looking at it, obviously, and lots of different things to look at, and different ways of seeing who's funding our political parties and how and why they are doing it. 22 minutes now to 8.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Well, the ANC's confirmed it's holding a special National Executive Committee meeting today. It's understood they're discussing the party's candidate list for the elections. I suppose the key question is whether it can or whether it should include or exclude the people against whom findings have been made by the State Capture Commission. You may remember months ago, the ANC's Integrity Commission Chair, Frank Chikane, telling SAFM Sunrise that there are at least 95 people who represent the party against whom findings have been made. So these are people who haven't gone to the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission and the ANC Veterans League have said this group cannot be included in the party's list to represent the ANC in Parliament and provincial legislatures. The President, Cyril Ramaphosa, has promised that the party will hold everyone responsible for corruption accountable. Well, what's going to happen? Dr. Abraham Harvey is a political analyst, been involved in our politics and the trade union movement for many years. Dr. Harvey, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thanks. Good to be with you.
What do you think is going to happen at this NEC meeting?
I wish you could answer that question. No, it's a big pickle, man. And, it seems the ANC is doomed. Every day there's adverse battles and now this thing happening. But it's riddled with confusion, ambiguity, and contradiction, really. I must tell you, this thing comes actually from Atlante because he's the head of the ANC's election committee and then goes to the commission later on. People get confused sometimes. So 97 people, but you see, the ANC is sitting with a problem now because what they did was they tightened up on the step aside rule. Earlier it was allegations, and then they changed it because they seen the problems it created, with Ismagashule and what happened. And they said that you step aside after you're charged formally. So a lot of those people, the 97 included did not appear before the disciplinary committee, it appears, because they say they might have been allegations, but they were not formally charged. So, this is going to be one hell of a meeting, Stephen, and I don't know what the outcome is going to be, And the thing is, people are more desperate because the polls there's a connection. Let me just draw it out quickly for you. Because the the polls are saying that most of the polls, they might end up 40 to 45%. So these people are more desperate now about where they're going to end up on that list and if at all. And obviously, the higher you are on that list, the better the chance. So it's very competitive and vicious. And, I think there's going to be fireworks at that NEC meeting. And, so I don't know what the outcome is going to be. But, there are serious problems besides the two ministers that are fingered. Gwedi Mantashe, and you must see what is happening here. Zondo hit back quickly. When there was a report that he was cleared by the disciplinary committee and so on, and Zondo hit back to say, no, you've not been cleared,
Yes,
and
I think that was, sorry, Dr. Harvey, I think that was, City Press said that he had, I don't think Mantashe said that he had.
Sorry, it's City Press, and then there's Kodwa. But the big thing for me is, Stephen, you got to get this clear. You see, Ramaphosa came to office on the ticket of anti-corruption. The big thing is, Pala is not mentioned, and if you want to look at the definition of corruption, there are elements of it in that whole Pala scandal. He is nowhere. He's cleared. How is he cleared? Besides Zizi Kodwa and Mantashe, how did he, when the independent parliamentary panel found that he had a prima facie case to answer? I'm just saying, and nothing is being said about him and Pala in terms of, it's a serious problem for me.
There might be, maybe, let me try and sketch out and you tell me if I've ever simplified this. Could it be that if the ANC decides we're going to exclude all of the people against whom findings were made, even though most of them don't face criminal charge, we're going to exclude all of those people. So the benefit might be then they can go into the election, they can go to voters and say, look, we're clean of corruption, look what we've done. The problem for that would be that many of these people have personal constituencies. Zandile Gumede is a good example of someone, I think, in Queenie with a personal constituency. So then she would not obviously campaign strongly for the ANC. Maybe she would, but possibly less likely to. That would be the one scenario. Yes. So the advantage would be you go to elections, you say, look what we've done. But the weakness is that you remove these people. If you go the other way, if you say, no, we're going to include these people, you'll probably have the DA, the EFF and others, making a big song and dance about it. But you would have them campaigning. Is the choice that simple? Could they try and go case by case, which they'll never manage to do in time?
Stephen, they're sitting between a rock and a hard place. That's an apt analogy here. What do they do? And the thing is, you are right. You are raising a very important point about what the results would be, if, for example, Gumede is not on the list and she, out of bitterness, decides she's not going to campaign. If that thing works its way through, let me tell you, it's going to work much more against the ANC in these polls. They might then even drop below 40%, if that transpires. And you're certainly right. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. If it turns out that they don't stand for election, and some of them are prominent people, they have significant support, in the areas where they are. It's going to have massive negative implications for the ANC in the election, Stephen. And I don't know. That is why I foresee there's going to be fireworks at the meeting today.
I suppose one of the other questions is that this issue has been, in a way, a sort of defining issue for the ANC, probably since Cyril Ramaphosa became its leader, and even maybe before he became president. And the issue's been, I mean, first there was the step aside rule, which to be fair, was implemented, and generally successfully, depending on how you assess these things. What I'm trying to get to, though, is that these cases, since the Zondo Commission was a unique thing in many ways. But since the findings of the Zondo Commission, there's really been no action against these people. And is this now the sharp end of it? The ANC is almost out of room. It now has to make a decision.
Yes, that's the thing, and the head of this whole massive confusion is Ramaphosa. Can you remember what he said about the Zondo Commission? I mean, it's pathetic, Stephen. He said, I'm waiting for that report. I'm going to implement the recommendations. He has done nothing regarding two key ministers in his cabinet, Kodwa and Mantash. And really, this is aside from the Pala, and I think maybe you're not wanting to go into it, but for me, it's of critical importance. It's the stark contradiction, really, that the panel found that he had a prima facie case and he's cleared, so there's no respect, and it was an independent parliamentary investigation and inquiry. I must just emphasize, it came issued out of Parliament. So, Stephen, I think people don't want to look into this thing, but Ramaphosa himself is seriously compromised as far as I'm concerned. It raises questions even about his own position on that list. If you don't go that route, really, I think it's being very inconsistent, But the ANC sits with a problem. When he tightened the definition of step aside to say no, not just allegations, but formal charges, what has happened, It has created a problem now because those people are saying, we were not charged. And so that's why we did not volunteer to appear before the Integrity Commission. It's a massive pickle, Stephen. Really, I don't envy that meeting, discussing and debating these things and coming to a decision is a very, very tricky situation.
Dr. Ibrahim Harvey, really appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. 13 minutes to 8. Well, tricky decision. In Dabazita on the line from Umsinga in KwaZulu-Natal. Dabazita, hi, how do you see it?
Morning, Stephen. How are you, sir?
I'm well. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just shocked, Stephen. I think the best thing you can do for us as a listener, Stephen, is to call the so-called chairperson of the Integrity Commission, Commissioner, I think Mr.
Chikane, Reverend Chikane.
To explain that how did, as the Integrity Commission of the ANC, how did they arrive on the conclusion that Mantashe must be included to the list to Parliament?
Mantashe, you mean?
Yes, Mantashe.
Okay. Well, we don't know if he will be on the list of Parliament. I mean, this is the issue, so we don't know.
Yeah, but we must come and clarify, including Ramaphosa, as your analyst said. How can you exonerate Cyril Ramaphosa from Palapala?
No,
just call him to explain to us. Yeah.
All right, Ndabazita, thank you. On the line from Umsinga, important point. JJ and Polokwane, hi, Palapala.
Good morning, SG. How are you?
I'm well, JJ. You still eating smooth peanut butter?
This issue of Palapala, the people in the whole country, they call themselves investigative journalists, independent analysts, and they didn't do anything about it. The Palapala was a thing fabricated by Arthur Fraser. And he based that on a book. Do you know the James Hadley Chase books? The Whiff of Money. Go and read that book. You'll get the root of this story of Palapala. It is not something that has happened. It's something that has been hatched.
But then why wouldn't the president say that it's not true? And instead, if you look at, and I mean, where Dr. Harvey must surely be correct, is if you look at the president's own version of events.
When it happened, Stephen, the president was not even in the country. Sure. It was reported to him when he was outside the country.
Yeah.
Right? Just like if your boy or your girl report to you and say, Papa, the house has been broken here and they've stolen 3 cups of tea. The other one is broken. You're outside. And when somebody asks you and say, "Hey, Steve, we hear in your house there was a burglary, and there are cups that are broken. Do you know about it?" Then he says, "Yes, I know," because it has been reported to him.
Yes, but the difference here is that the money was there. To use your analogy, these would be cups I shouldn't have.
Pardon?
These would be cups I shouldn't have, to use your analogy. In other words, you're saying these were cups that were stolen, but these are cups that shouldn't be there.
I understand it. If they say, "Look, we sold the buffaloes here, 3 of them, and then there was a burglary or there was a theft," do you think he would say, "No, that money was not there"? It's impossible. But do yourself a favor. Get that book that I'm talking about. James Hadley Chase, The Whiff of Money. And then you read and then you talk to me. You don't have to finish it.
Okay.
You can read 10, 15 pages.
All right, JJ.
And I told this to the Hawks. To say, you are busy investigating things. If you are a good investigator, read this thing and see if it's not the origin. I told them.
Okay, thank you. James Hadley Chase, haven't heard that name in a long time. Gift, ANC spokesperson in the Eastern Cape. Hello, Gift.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners. Look, I think Dr. V misrepresented the step-aside issue also when it comes to whether you'll be allowed to stand for any position. Just to correct Dr. V. Because he's an analyst, he must just do research on some of these issues that he talks about on radio. Because any member who has been suspended in terms of Rule 25.70 according to the ANC's constitution, following an indictment, Stephen, to appear in court of law on any charge, should not be allowed to stand for any position. That's just the principle on the issue of step aside, and also on the issue whether the person is eligible to stand. Secondly, likewise, any member who has already stepped aside voluntarily following an indictment to appear in a court of law on any charge, Stephen, should not be allowed to stand for any position. I'm raising this deliberately because he made an assertion that that meeting is going to be, there will be blood on the floor. I'm not quoting him, but...
No, I know what you mean, Gift. But, okay,
let me, because I wanted to state this, man. All those who have been indicted or charged, they are not going to be on the list.
Yeah, sure.
Stephen.
But let me put it like this.
What I was trying to clarify in what Dr. Avi said. They are not going to be on the list.
Okay.
This is just on record.
No, sure. But the issue is about the people against whom findings have been made. And the Integrity Committee, and if I remember correctly, the NEC of the ANC said, if you have a finding against you from the Zondo Commission, you must go to the Integrity Commission, right?
Of course.
And those people, I think we can probably agree on this too, those people did not go to the Integrity Commission. So here's the question. If someone has a finding against them from the Zondo Commission and has not yet been charged, can they represent the ANC in Parliament or a provincial legislature? And isn't that the question the NEC has to answer?
Yeah, look, Stephen, just to be on record, those people have not been formally charged by a court of law. They have not been indicted. As long as you have not been indicted, you cannot be prejudiced on the basis that there's a report.
But this is what I never understand, Gift, and in a way it's the fundamental question. If there was a process, a legal process, a commission of inquiry into my behavior as Stephen Grootes and a finding against me, and I was not charged, I guarantee you I wouldn't still be here the next day. If there was an inquiry, a legal process into the CEO of a cell phone company or a bank, and there was a finding against them, and they were not charged, they still would not be allowed at work the next day. That must be true, and yet in government or in the ANC it seems to be different. That's the issue.
Look, if you get my point on the issue of prejudice, because this is about prejudice, because you cannot prejudice someone because of there's an outcome.
No, I disagree. I think you can. I think we have a right to say, if I'm going to vote for this party, I have a right to say, as a voter, I want a higher standard. Whether you're someone who a finding against whom has been made for the DA in the Western Cape or the ANC and national government, if a finding has been made against you, I'm allowed as a voter to say, I don't know if I'm going to vote for that party if that party insists on keeping that person. It goes back to my point. If there was a finding against me, I wouldn't be here the next morning.
Look, Stephen, you will recall that the ANC, when it brought this issue of renewal, it wanted to have credibility in all its processes, but also to have integrity. But at the very same day, it cannot prejudice members who have not been charged before a court of law on the basis. Let me try this one example, Stephen.
Yeah, but Gifted, the point stands. The same point stands.
Stephen, you had Comrade Mike Mabuya Kulu from KZN who was in the leadership of the peace in KZN. Comrade Mabuya Kulu was indicted by a court of law, but he voluntarily stepped aside before he was charged. And immediately the case proceeded, and that didn't give him an opportunity to be in the structures of the ANC up until the court, his case was withdrawn. Now he's back in the structures of the ANC after almost 2 to 3 years in the wilderness. And these are the things that sometimes we always wonder that why justice will be delayed, because at the end of the day, it prejudices the very same person that has been charged, and the process is not speeded up.
You keep talking legalistically. We're not talking legalistically here. We're talking politics. The reason that if a finding were made against me, that I would not be here the next morning is because no one would trust me. The reason that a CEO of a cell phone company or a bank would be removed if there were a finding against them and they were not criminally charged would not be because they're criminally responsible. It would be because no one trusts them. And isn't this really what this election is all about, Gift? It is about trust.
No, of course, I agree. Of course.
So then why can we trust someone against whom a finding's been made by the Zondo Commission?
Look, I think this is what also was explained by Comrade Mantashe on the findings of the Zondo Commission, that he wanted to take the case for review. And he must be given that opportunity to take the case for review. And you cannot just prejudice him because there was that report from Zondo Commission, and then he wants to take the case, the outcome of the report for review, and you want to prejudice him to say he cannot be part of the structures of the ANC, he cannot stand. That would be prejudice.
But voters are allowed to be prejudiced against people they don't trust, right?
That's your view, Stephen.
I think voters can be prejudiced against people they don't trust, Gift. I don't know if that... Okay, if it's just my view, I imagine I'm not alone in my view. But you will accept that people can make the decision on who to trust. Let's put it another way. There was an ANC councillor who was on video, the video is still on YouTube as far as I know, hitting a person with a glass jar in a council, right? You remember, I forget the person's name now. But
of course, I remember.
Yeah, okay. Now, there was no charge against them for a long time. As a voter, I'm allowed to decide. Now, if someone in my team did that, I would not want to work with them. And I would say to my boss, I'm not going to work with this person. I think they're violent, right? Now, if someone makes a similar finding against someone else, but they're not criminally charged, as a voter, I'm allowed to decide I'm not going to support that person. Isn't that the problem the ANC faces?
No, Stephen, let me just quickly respond to this issue of the judge. No, the councillor was charged, Stephen. I know.
Took a long time.
No, Stephen, not for a long time. He was charged, Stephen, immediately. When he was indicted in court, he was charged. I know, because I know for a fact that I was working in Nelson Mandela region. I followed the case.
No, sure. But even if he wasn't, I could have decided not to trust him. Yeah, sure. But even if he wasn't, as a voter, I can decide not to trust a party that has someone like that within it. Right? And isn't that the fundamental question? I think, in a way, the fundamental question of this election, one of the 3 or 4 fundamental questions, is whether the ANC can get the trust of people. And isn't that... how does it do that?
Look, South Africans have been voting the ANC, reaffirming it every 5 years because it trusts its policies, it trusts its program, and they will continue doing that. I can tell you, Stephen, now, today, on the 4th of March, that overwhelmingly on the 29th of May, they will still vote for the ANC, and the ANC will win the election because they trust the ANC. They don't follow leaders, but they trust the ANC. They don't have adulation to leaders. They've got adulation to its policies because they know that those policies have changed the makeup of this country.
All right. Gift, thank you. On the line from King Williamstown. Gift, as you know, he is a regular caller, but he is a spokesperson for the ANC in the Eastern Cape. And so you'll know that when a caller phones in, and I know they hold a political position, I don't always know, but if I know that they do, I will try and point that out to you. Anyway, it wasn't, in a way, not the conversation I was sort of expecting to have, but there we are. All right, lots to come. We'll talk about e-tolls in a little while. Don't forget the big mediated conversation today around buildings. How do you know if the building you work in is safe? You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top stories at 8 o'clock. Ekhangala residents protest over water, and AKA's alleged killers yet to be extradited. Very good morning to you. Residents of Ekhangala near Bronkhorstspruit in Gauteng are protesting this morning over water shortages in the area. The aggrieved residents say they've been without water now for a month. The chairperson of the Ekhangala Development Foundation, Rankitsing Ashaqaba, says the area will be under total shutdown today, with even the children not going to school.
There's a lot of story about this water crisis in Bronkhorstspruit. So now we want the province to intervene in this issue and make sure that they resolve this issue, because it's like a month now, our people without water. In the one township, we're only having 6 water tankers, which it can't even reach the numbers of our people. Only essential services that will be working. Everyone, even the school kids, are not going to school today. If you are saying you're sending your kids to school, well, where is going to pass?
The defense in the case of the 2 men arrested in Eswatini for the murder of rapper Keenan aka Forbes and Tebello Tips Mutswane say they are yet to receive a comprehensive application for the extradition process. Siabonga Ndimande and Malusi Ndimande were arrested in Babani 2 weeks ago. Their legal representative says they will only be able to proceed with the extradition hearing once they have received the full extradition application. Mtobisim Kalipi has more.
The 2 Ndimande brothers, Siabonga and Malusi, were arrested at a house they were renting in Mbabane a few weeks ago. They were arrested in connection with 4 cases of murder and attempted murder. It is alleged that after killing AKA and his friend Tebello in February last year, they killed 2 more people in Durban on separate occasions between February and March. The 2 accused made their first appearance in court last week. They will appear again in the same court on Tuesday for a possible start of the extradition process. I'm Tobisim Kalipi in Babane, Eswatini.
The Competition Commission will today start with its Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry in Sunnyside, Pretoria, which will be chaired by Chief Economist James Hodge. The Commission says the inquiry will focus on examining the distribution of media content on South Africa's digital platforms and the advertising technology markets that connect buyers and sellers. Some of the country's biggest media houses and digital platforms, including the SABC, Google Search and News, YouTube and Meta, will participate in the month-long hearings. The proceedings will be live streamed on various platforms. Closing arguments in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial within a trial are expected to be heard this morning at the High Court in Pretoria. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain who was shot dead in October 2014. The defense is challenging the admissibility of confession statements allegedly made by accused number 1 and 2. Moses Ibia and Bongani Ntanzi claimed that they were assaulted and tortured into signing the alleged confession statements. Pumzile Mlangeni has more.
These confession statements are key evidence for the state, which wants the court to admit them in the main trial. The state called several police officers who were present following the arrest of Sibiya and Danzi in May and June 2020 to answer to the assault allegations. Lead investigator Brigadier Bongani Gininda denied there was any torture or assault and claims both suspects made statements freely and voluntarily. The two are alleged to be known hitmen as they gathered information around the murder of Meyiwa.
And the storming of the main prison in Haiti's capital has left at least 5 people dead. Armed gangs broke into the jail in Port-au-Prince yesterday and freed almost 4,000 inmates. The BBC's Will Grant reports.
The notorious gang leader Jimmy Cheresier, a former elite police officer more commonly known as Barbecue, has taken responsibility for the violence. The latest attacks come as Prime Minister Ariel Henry is seemingly trapped outside of the country after he travelled to Nairobi to discuss the idea of Kenya leading an international security force to tackle the armed gangs. Mr. Cheresier wants to force the Prime Minister from office. Elections have been postponed on numerous occasions, and the prison break is part of that effort to oust him.
The top story at 8 o'clock, residents of Ekangala near Bronkhorstspruit in Gauteng are protesting this morning over water shortages. The aggrieved residents say they've been without water now for a month. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhaleme.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Soccer. Now, after a win over the weekend, Orlando Pirates, their coach, says they are fully setting their sights on Cape Town Spurs. And tennis action saw Carlos Alcaraz outlasting Rafa Nadal. The details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy on a couple of major routes across Joburg today. One is the N1 going north. It's a massive backlog from beyond 14th Avenue all the way round to a crash scene at Rivonia Road. There's also some heavy traffic coming through from Pitfontein through Benoni into a crash on the N12 West at Atlas Road. That's a really big queue. And a breakdown with us between New Road and Allendale on the N1 South. Traffic out of Pretoria to Joburg staying heavy through Brockfontein interchange all the way down, queuing up on Samrand and Olifants and New Road to get into the N1 South. That's how badly backed up it is. Protesters still blocking off the N11 just north of the 602 Dundee exit. That is north of Newcastle, north of Ladysmith. Ladysmith Newcastle is effectively blocked. You could route in via Dundee if you want to keep yourself moving through that particular area. And Cape Town, very heavy coming out of Mitchell's Plain this morning, though. Traffic lights, M7R300, then a crash on the M7 by Govan and Becky Road. It's a big backlog on the M7 North and the side road, Veltefreden Road. Quite heavy is the alternative route option as well. Also, just worth noting, the M5 is super heavy this morning as well. Backlog still with us from Ottery all the way through to the N2. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 after 8, good morning with SFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Well, you heard that conversation with the ANC spokesperson in the Eastern Cape. Gift does phone in from time to time and sort of wasn't quite expecting a conversation that went down that way, but that's where we are. In a way, it is, I think, one of the questions of the elections. You tell me what you think on this on 086 000 2032. Other conversations to come. We'll talk e-tolls. We keep being told e-tolls in Gauteng will end, but then they sort of keep coming back. We'll talk also, of course, about buildings, whether they're safe to work in. How do you know? I think that's an important conversation. That to come from 8:30. Good morning.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Plus, you get 40,000 Rand cashback. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Visit your nearest Kia dealership for a test drive. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
Mzansi Africa! All roads lead to FNB Stadium on Saturday, 9 March for the Soweto Derby. and we want you to be part of it. SABC Sport and Vodacom are giving you a chance to win your share of 30 double tickets. That's not all. As a Buccaneer or Corsi fan, you can also win double jerseys of Orlando Pirates or Kaizer Chiefs for you and your friend. To enter this exhilarating giveaway, head over to sabcsport.com and visit the competition page. Entries close on Tuesday, 5 March 2024. T's and C's apply. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Attention listeners, do you know a young visionary making a difference in South Africa? Sunday World is searching for unsung heroes. From community leaders to tech innovators, we're looking for the young minds driving positive change. Nominate someone who's making waves in education, science, tourism or any field. Let's recognize and celebrate their contributions together. Nominate your unsung hero now, because every hero deserves their moment in the spotlight. Hashtag unsung heroes, hashtag nominate now, hashtag Sunday World. sundayworld.co.za/heroes-nomination-2024.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, interesting conversations. You heard that conversation with Gift from the ANC in the Eastern Cape. Billy in Sekhukhune. Billy, hi.
Stephen, how are you?
I'm well. Go for it.
2 lost in one county. One for the ANC members, the other for Stephen and Billy.
Yeah.
They are telling us that the commission has reported has found that Guadamantashe and Zikotwa are implicated.
Yeah.
It's a commission which was checked by a judge, which concluded its job. Now, the ANC cannot implement its step aside because it's saying they are not formally charged. Now, the law of this country says you are innocent until proven otherwise. This commission has proven them to be guilty, and they just have to face the consequences now. They must defend themselves, and they cannot defend themselves while they are serving in parliament. They can serve in their ANC structure, but the parliament, when you've got an implication of guilt, especially for state cases that were implicated, you must never be allowed to be on the list of serving in official duties of the state.
Yeah. Well,
there are some people in their department for all those allegations before they can even take them to court. You are told, no, you cannot work here for now. It's a suspension. It's a precautionary measure so that you can deal with matters clearly. This one can just go to parliament, work there with implications and tamper with any evidence.
Yeah.
Because that's the essence. You get suspended because you should not tamper with any evidence. They are allowed to do that because they are members of the party called ANC.
Yeah.
Maybe this could be different meaning to you, not to me. Not asking the Congress. It's something else. It's crooks. Thank you.
All right, Billy and Sekhukhune, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, interesting. Gift and Konde is the person who phoned in. You were listening to that, Kirk. Hi.
Good morning, Stephen. I agree with your commentator earlier who says the ANC is in a really tough position.
Yeah.
They have made the announcement, or President Ramaphosa made the announcement that the results of the Zondo Commission will lead to Integrity Commission hearings, which haven't happened. And now, at the 23rd hour of the day, there is now a scramble to clear the people who need to be added to the list. I agree that with Gift that the list hasn't been finalized, but I do think there's a lot of shenanigans going on now getting that list finalized, because as per the Zondo report, there's so many people who are tainted that it's going to be a very difficult task to put people into position, including the Deputy President and a good few of the ministers. So Good luck to them, but they voted on themselves, so they deserve everything they're going to get, the ANC, unfortunately.
All right, Kirk in Cape Town, strong view. Bond in Koberga. Hello, Bond. You were listening to Gift in Konde?
Yes, indirectly. Good morning, Stephen and listeners. I just want, when you discuss this, to be alive of one thing that is very important, the Constitution. What does the Constitution say? In Section 47, the Constitution states who's eligible to be a member of the National Assembly. But one of those that are not eligible is someone who has been sentenced to more than a year imprisonment without the option of a fine. That person cannot be an MP.
Yeah.
Secondly, if 5 years is elapsed after being sentenced, whether you're a hardcore murderer, you're eligible to be a member of parliament. So if some citizens reasonably expect someone who's suitable to be an MP, they say they want this person, but some party refuses to do so because of the trust issue that you mentioned, the morality that you mentioned. It's possible that person can, in terms of Section 2 of the Constitution, which says this Constitution is supreme, any law or conduct inconsistent with it is invalid. So if the ANC, as it has done, or other parties adopted to step aside as a police, it's possible that one courageous litigant can take the Constitutional Court and it may be overruled with conduct that is inconsistent with Section 47. What? Yes, a voter wants someone who's of moral, a paragon of morality. But it's not necessarily so. Someone could have repented, have his Damascus moment, and they want that person. So the Constitution says, yes, you can have it, but the parties may say, we don't want such a person. So it cannot be a one-size-fits-all. Each circumstance dictates the outcome, should dictate the outcome. Remember Section 47 of the Constitution and Section 2. Thank you.
Yeah, but Bond, okay. And this is why I sort of say, you can have the legalities all you like, but to say to a person, to say to a political party, you have to include this person, or you can't exclude them for this reason. I'm sure a political party could say, if we include this person, we will lose votes, and therefore we won't include them.
Yes.
That would be rational.
Yes, it's allowed. That's why there's a leadership. It's allowed, but I'm saying that some courageous person can say, if I deem to be qualified to go there, I'll use Section 2 of the Constitution, take my own party to court, and the court will rule in his or her favor, because it says Section 47, as long as the person has been sentenced to more than 1 year without the option of a fine, it disqualifies. Thank you, Stephen.
Bond and Koberg, always good to hear you. Thank you. 16 minutes after 8.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Well, during the State of the Province address in Gauteng by the Premier there, Panyaza Lesufi, 2 weeks ago, we were told that e-tolls were over, and yet the gantries, as far as I know, are still there. And we've sort of been told a couple of times that e-tolls will end. Wayne Duvenage is the CEO of the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, which started out as the organisation campaigning against e-tolling in Gauteng. They had a big protest about this over the weekend. Wayne, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be with you, Stephen.
What were you asking for? The Premier has said e-tolls are over. Is there anything more that you want?
Well, we want them to be over. They've been planning to, end this scheme for years now, and they keep missing the deadlines. And then it gets more and more confusing as various people in authority open their mouths on the issue. Back in 2022, when the minister, during his midterm budget policy statement, indicated that this was the funding mechanism of e-tolls was going to be dispensed with. The system continues to operate. We see a lot of arguments going back and forth as to how much money is going to be paid by which authority. The Gauteng government has been roped into settling some of the debt and maintaining the roads when they ought not to have even gone down that road, because these are national roads and SANRAL's decisions are required here. So it really does get confusing, and I think all we want, Stephen, is finality on this matter.
It's interesting that, from what I can see, there seems to be a dispute over who needs to pay for it. Now, I've always found this an interesting argument because the people in Gauteng could say, quite reasonably, we think national government should pay for this. National government imposed it on us because, as I'm sure you will agree, people in Gauteng were not consulted. Everyone living outside the country could say, quite reasonably, we didn't really want this thing. It doesn't affect us. We don't live in Gauteng. We don't drive through Gauteng. Why should we pay? I don't know how you settle that argument.
Well, neither do we travel on the freeways and the highway infrastructure that bypasses eThekwini through Umhlanga, and they're not told. The new freeway infrastructure that's being widened between Pietermaritzburg and eThekwini is not going to be told. That we know. So I think it's very important to understand that national road infrastructure are national competencies, and they get funded by National Treasury. They have always done so. There are some of those routes that are tolled. Some of them are tolled through concessionaire agreements for a number of years. But the long and short of it, this is social infrastructure and economic hub of this country that requires funding from National Treasury. It's been that way, and it should continue to be that way. They changed the rule here to try and make about 30% of their revenue, by the way, SANRAL's revenue, a National Roads Agency, had they got it right, would have got 30% of the revenue from 1% of the tarmac that they control. And that is gross abuse, quite frankly, of the Gauteng citizens.
What do you think is going to happen? I mean, as I understand the current sticking point, national government wants to be paid the sort of third that Gauteng has sort of agreed to pay. It wants it up front. Gauteng can't pay it up front. It's a large amount of money. I think 12 billion, something like that. Is there any way to resolve this? And I mean, I don't know, Wayne, you might have noticed there's an election coming.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I mean, 85 to 90% of Gauteng's revenue comes from National Treasury. So whether you pass it through the Gauteng province or send it directly from National Treasury is neither here nor there. You must also understand that over 21 billion rand has already been paid over from National Treasury to SANRAL since about 2009 or 2010 for the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project. It was also a project that was came at 3 times the price at about 18 billion rand when it shouldn't have cost more than about 6 to 7 billion rand. So this is a national issue, Stephen. It has to be settled between Department of Transport, National Treasury, who backed the bonds, and SANRAL themselves, who convinced everybody that this was a good scheme and that it would work, and they failed dismally at it. The Gauteng province should never have been roped into paying 30%, and we hear now they are committing to doing the maintenance on these roads, which don't even appear on their assets registers. We don't know how they get that right.
Does anyone still pay for e-tolls? I mean, are there 1 or 2 people who are still paying?
Minimal. It's down to between 10 and 12%, mainly the car rental companies, fleet companies, not even the government departments, by the way, Stephen, who's supposed to pay. They don't pay anymore. So it's really those last 10% of people that are keeping it on life support. If they made a decision to stop paying, I think government will be forced to make this decision to pull the plug a lot earlier.
Wayne Duvenage, thank you, CEO at Outer, now the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, started, of course, as a campaigning group against e-tolls in Gauteng.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
Well, more and more research over the last sort of 2 decades or so has shown how important early learning is for children. We put a lot of focus on matrics, of course, in a way correctly, but in fact we should be putting a lot more resources and a lot more emphasis on children learning when they're a lot younger. Within that comes news that around, I think it's about 1.3 million children between the age of 3 and 5 are not in any form of early learning. Only 45% of those who are in any kind of early learning centre, any childhood development centre, any creche, are actually on what's described as the correct development goals. In other words, they're sort of they're growing and developing in the way that they should. Professor Eric Atmore is at the Centre for Early Childhood Development. Professor Atmore, good morning.
Stephen, good morning, and good morning to your listeners.
It would seem again there's another generation of young children we're almost ignoring, maybe betraying is a better word. Just so many young children not getting the support that they need.
Yes, Stephen, our government, since 1994, there was so much promise about what would be done for children, but government has certainly let our young children down. And we see it not only in the grade 12 results, but also in those few children who can read for meaning by grade 4. So we've let our children down. We've got wonderful policies. Our constitution mentions a Bill of Rights. We've got a Children's Bill of Rights, and we're not implementing it. So there's a lot of good work on paper, but very, very little implementation.
Obviously, these things boil down to money, and I presume one of the problems that young children have is that only their parents can really argue for them. They can't argue for themselves. Is that one of the reasons they're almost neglected sometimes?
Yes, it is, but there are a number of other reasons, and the 3 big ones for me are a clear lack of political will. You know, it's election time now, and we'll see every politician kissing babies. But once the election's over, those children will be forgotten. So there's a distinct lack of political will. And then we have public officials, not all of them, but certainly the majority, who are simply incompetent and shouldn't be in their jobs. And then budget. If you look at the budget that was announced a few weeks ago, less than 2% of the basic education budget goes for early childhood development. And we're talking about 6 million children in total, the age range birth to 6. So it's a multiplicity of factors, and we really have to get it right. Otherwise, we're breeding a lost generation, and these dismal results are going to repeat themselves year after year.
There's been issues around the Department of Social Development, which is sort of in charge of these, or was in charge of these. Is there anything more that they should be doing? Should this be moving to basic education? If I remember correctly, the grade 0 class is now part of basic education.
Stephen, they've all moved across to basic education. It's been such for the past year and a bit. The irony is that it should never have been in social development. And again, around 1994, when we advised Minister Bengu at the time, and then Minister Asmal after that early childhood development, a huge component of that is the education, the learning program, and that it should be located within basic education. That was ignored, and some 28 years later, it was moved across. I must say the move has been very positive in the sense that you can see a qualitative difference. But the national department, the ECD component, is so small. You know, it's a few people, and the problem is so huge that they really need to get civil society and the 60 or 65 non-profits working in the sector on board. There's a lot of talent. There are phenomenal women, just under 200,000 of them, who are providing for our children every single day, and they're doing a sterling job. But it really needs a mind shift and the political will.
Do you see any sign of that coming? I mean, it's not a big campaign issue that I can see. Obviously, other countries, more and more research is going to come and show how important this is. And again, and I've made this point about our basic education system before schools, that our younger South Africans are getting further and further behind. Everyone talks about fourth industrial this. No one's preparing them for that, and we're doing the same to another generation. We're tying their shoelaces together before they even get shoes.
That's a very good analogy. Look, over the past few months, there's been much more advocacy in the early childhood sector than there's ever been. And there have been isolated spots, areas of productivity and willingness. The city of Cape Town, for one, the mayor is a children's champion, and he's working really hard on getting early childhood development in its rightful place. But we need that to filter up through the provinces where we're not seeing it, and to national where we're not seeing it, and ultimately to the president. You know, the president, there's that wonderful photograph of the president holding a young girl. She can't be more than 3 or 4 years old. And I just wonder, when he put her down, has he thought of her again? And we simply have to think about our children because, as you say, the payoff, both educationally and economically, is down the line. And we've got this obligation to our children.
Professor Eric Atmore, thank you, at the Centre for Early Childhood Development. Really appreciate the time. Such an important conversation to have. More of those, I think, to come. You're with SAFM, 27 minutes after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. How are Pirates feeling?
They're catching up nicely. Their coach, Jose Rivero, saying it's important now to start their 9-pointer week with a bang. They are fully setting their sights on Cape Town Spurs. Now, the Sea Robbers ended their 3-game winless streak in the DStv Premiership, beating Polokwane City 1-0 at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium. The result strengthening their aspirations to finish second in the league. Pirates are now fourth on the log with 29 points, only 2 behind the second place Cape Town City. Both teams have played 18 league games so far. Now, this week could boost these top-up hopes as Pirates will face Spurs on Wednesday and arch rivals Kaizer Chiefs on Saturday. Here's their coach, Jose Rivero.
So happy with the victory, with the 3 points, the clean sheet, the good performance, I think. Obviously, we go game by game, but we know that this is a crucial moment of the season where we cannot miss our chances, especially if other teams, which right now are ahead of us, they don't get the result. We have to take the opportunities to reduce the distance or to overpass one of them. We will see the luck in the end of the season.
Moving now to rugby, where France beat an injury-hit Britain side 21-0 in the men's final of the Los Angeles Sevens to claim their first title in a Rugby Sevens World Series in 19 years. Now, the last time France won a cup final was in Paris in 2005, and the presence of 15-star Antoine Dupont energized the French team, which has moved up from 7th to 4th place on the overall standings. The Bliss Box, they finished in 11th after beating Canada. On to golf, the American Jordan Gumberg won his first DP World Tour title in South Africa yesterday, beating Robin Williams in a playoff. Now, both Gumberg and the home player Williams finished on 12 under par after 4 rounds at the St. Francis Bay to go head-to-head. With a long birdie putt, Gumberg wrapped up the title at the second playoff hole, eclipsing Williams, who had double bogeyed the 17th in the final round to lose a long-time 2-stroke lead. More golf now. A Monday finish will await the PGA National after the final round of the opening event in Florida was interrupted by thunderstorms that brought nearly 2 inches of rain. That was yesterday afternoon, forcing everyone off the course. Now, Austin Eckert was the leader at 15 under through 7 holes, 1 shot ahead of South Africa's Eric van Rooyen. And finally, tennis. The 22-time Grand Slam winner, Rafa Nadal, played a tennis event, losing to fellow Spaniard Carlos Alcaraz in the Netflix Slam 3-6, 6-4. 14-12 was the last and final set. The 37-year-old Nadal says it's an encouraging sign, but he isn't sure what the future holds.
For me, it's very difficult to predict how I can see myself in a competitive mood. No, I need at least to spend more time on the tour, at least to practice with the professional players, and even if not playing many official matches, play practice matches.
More sport here on SFM comes around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. The building that you work in, is it safe? That's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
A very good morning with the news headlines. Kemudupi Makhalemele. Rand Water says it is going to start reducing water supply to municipalities around the country that have outstanding overdue debt to the company. Residents of Ekangala near Bronkhorstspruit in Gauteng are protesting this morning over water shortages in their area. And a 31-year-old female doctor is expected to appear before the Middelburg Magistrates Court in Mpumalanga for allegedly stealing medication and medical equipment at a public hospital. Details coming up at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Stays very heavy on a couple of busy routes anyway in the Gauteng region. One is the N1 going north. This collision before Rivonia. It happened about 6 a.m. this morning. Traffic stays very heavy from Veldfrieden Park, so just north of 14th Avenue. You'll see traffic all the way through to that crash by Rivonia. Complicating matters, some real problems getting off at Winnie Mandela northbound and southbound as well. So southbound from Rivonia also backlogging. Coming out of Four Ways, a nightmare Monday for a lot of motorists. Winnie Mandela is heavy. Lone Hill Boulevard, the Vitkoppen Road, the main road down into Bryanston, even Douglas Drive onto Grosvenor Road coming into Bryanston out of Douglasdale. It's a whole pile up of traffic there as well. Joburg's Benoni side, the N12 West, the crash at Atlas Road, that scene has been cleared. Driving into Durban, there's now a breakdown in the roadworks near Pavilion Mall, so that means immediate traffic backlogs into the Paradise Valley interchange coming out of Pinetown. That's heavy. Ladysmith through to Newcastle, the N11 blocked by protesters this morning, just north north of the 602 exit to Dundee. You could probably just keep yourself moving by taking the 602 up through Glencoe and the the R68 from Dundee back towards the N11. It'll keep you moving between the closure point between the Newcastle and Ladysmith area. Also protesting just north of Idutwa, between Idutwa and Mthatha this morning. Sounds quite aggressive and quite hostile on that section. The M10 cutting, so I'd advise truckers and motorists to avoid going between Dutwa and Mthatha until later today, until that situation's resolved. And coming out of Cape Town, Mitchell's Plains, M7 remains heavy. There's not only traffic light problems at the R300, but this morning it's a crash up by Govan and Becky Bridge. M7 leaving Mitchell's Plains stays heavily backed up. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9 the time for your mediated conversation this morning. Last week it emerged the Labour Department had ordered 2 major buildings that house hundreds of workers must be evacuated. First came news that the SA Air Force headquarters in Tshwane that no one must go in because the temperatures inside now rise to 40 degrees Celsius. There are 3 ventilation systems in that building. They don't work properly. 1 doesn't work at all. 2 only run at 50% capacity. Because there's still some mission-critical staff who have to work in that building, they're allowed in for 2 hours at a time. They have to wear face masks while they're there. Then came confirmation that the SAPS headquarters at Telkom Towers had been closed because police officers and workers there were in an unsafe environment. They were dealing with broken toilets, broken ventilation systems, and then also we're told the building was not being cleaned properly. In other words, there was dirt all over the place. So then what are the rules and regulations around buildings like this? What's the role of the Labour Department in making sure the building you're working in is safe? Well, first this morning from the Labour Department, you'll hear from the Chief Director from the Department of Employment and Labour, Tebogo Tejani. Then, structural integrity. Gundu Maswime is a lecturer in municipal infrastructure management at UCT and an expert on civil engineering and structural engineering. And then ventilation. Gianni Beloy is a mechanical engineer specialising in heating, ventilation and air conditioning. We start then with the Chief Director in the Department of Employment and Labour, Tebogo Tejani. Tebogo, good morning and thanks for your time.
Good morning and good morning to the listeners of SAFM.
You have the legal power to actually close down a building if necessary. What kind of environment does an employer have to provide for people to work in?
Thank you very much. The inspectorate enforce a number of labor legislation, and here we're talking occupational health and safety in this particular instance that you're asking. So in terms of Occupational Health and Safety Act, an employer is obliged to keep the premises or the workplace in a safe environment for both the health and safety, physical safety of the employees or the workers. So in an instance where there are challenges, obviously, because we embark as inspectorate or as inspectors on both proactive and reactive inspections, in an event that we have a plan to target a particular sector, like, we are targeting currently the wholesale and retail, but in a reactive instance like this where we are called and be notified there are certain challenges that workers might have, and then we then send inspectors to go and look at those instances, and guided by the Occupational Health and Safety, we then look at those aspects, and if indeed there are serious concerns, then a prohibition order might be issued. But if there are minor issues that can be corrected, obviously there are other citations such as improvement notices that are issued.
So people can complain to you. Is that how it works? Workers can complain to the Labour Department and then you do an inspection?
Absolutely. We've got 126 labour centres in South Africa. If a worker feels that there's a matter that requires the attention of the inspectorate, they can easily visit any labour centre and obviously indicate what their challenges are. Inspectors will take the details and then they will embark on a reactive inspection and go and check as to those allegations or those issues that have been raised. And indeed, we encourage close partnership with workers and the community. If they see any issues that they might feel they are of concern, we'll obviously send our specialist inspectors to look into those issues.
How often do you get complaints? I mean, is your inspectorate busy? Are they out at different buildings every day?
Look, we do have inspectors that are very busy. As I've indicated, we do have proactive inspections where we have a schedule of the number of inspections inspectors do, but we also have reactive ones. Indeed, there will be legitimate complaints that we receive. Some are not based on what we look into, but we looked at every issue that has been raised with the inspector. But it is important that our citizens note that they must take all the details. For example, you need to give us the name of the employer or the name of the business, the location, the physical location of that employer, and outline the nature of the complaint. And then on the basis of that, then we'll then look into the matter.
Closing a building, telling an employer they can no longer have workers in that building, it's obviously an extreme decision, and the circumstances would be such. How often does that happen? Does that happen often?
Look, I would not say often, but it's quite predominant across South Africa, not only in Gauteng, because obviously we've got lots of workplaces across the country. And we do receive some, unfortunately, that's where an incident would have occurred. As you know, in the Northwest, for example, the roof falling at a particular school. So we'll then go into that and look into that. But in terms of our proactive inspections, indeed, we do receive a handful number of instances where we are forced to issue a prohibition order to ensure that we safeguard the lives or the health of the workers in that particular instance.
I imagine roofs falling in, that sort of structural integrity question must be something that happens perhaps more often. Do you get questions around, I suppose, ventilation? Things are too hot. I mean, in many buildings you can't open windows. Things like that?
No. We do find those. I mean, for example, where there's challenges with the water, as an example. Obviously, if there's no water that is flowing, it becomes difficult for both clients and workers to work in that environment. And that if the employer does not resolve that within a short period of time, then the inspectors will have no choice, for example, but to prohibit entry into that environment until corrective measures have been taken.
If you close a building, what do you have to do to open it again? So in other words, and I think this happened once in Joburg with a hospital ward. If you close a building, you then have to go do a proper inspection, right? It's actually, for the employer, much harder to get that building reopened. Is that right?
No, not necessarily. It depends on how ready an employer is in terms of correcting. So that is why when we issue a prohibition order, when you ask me a question, when are they supposed to correct and open the office, my answer will be simple: as soon as they correct those issues that have been raised. Even if they do it within a day, 2 days, 3 days, a month, that means when the employer has corrected those aspects, then the inspectors will come back, check in terms of the prohibition order, if all the areas that have been cited in the prohibition order have been corrected, then obviously that occupational health and safety specialist can then uplift that prohibition order.
I would think that sometimes people complaining about their employer because they just want to create trouble. And sometimes people have a really serious case, it's too hot or the toilets don't work or something like that. You have to send an inspector out each time to check. So, there's a lot of legwork that goes on here.
Yeah, but I think also before I even get to that, I think it is important to note that the inspectorate also promote what we call self-regulation. The implementation adherence to labor laws, it's supposed to be done automatically by the employers by following those legislations. For example, in this instance, occupational health and safety. So there are sections that determines what structures should be put in place at that particular workplace, like your SHE-reps, your evacuation officers, and. So basically the expectation is that those individuals or those officials need to assist the employer in making sure that the premises or the workplace it's adhering to occupational health and safety standards, failing which obviously the inspectorate will then come in and find that there are certain areas that are not adhered to an extent that they will then issue an improvement plan or non-compliance order, with the worst case scenario, a prohibition order.
Tebogo Tejani, thank you. Chief Director for the Department of Employment and Labour. Really appreciate the time. Your mediated conversation continues here on SFM, 17 minutes to 9, talking about the safety of buildings and and when they're unsafe. Gundo Maswime is an expert on infrastructure. He's in the Department of Civil Engineering at UCT. Gundo, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Steve, and good morning to your listeners.
When you try and inspect a building for structural integrity, say it's a big government building in Swane somewhere, I presume you can't see from the outside if they're properly maintained. How difficult is it to know if the building is safe?
It is not difficult because there's a systematic way that is done. First, you need to have the building plans and all the documents with the specifications for the building. Then you go and do a visual inspection where you just walk around the building, start from the foundation, look at the main structural members like beams, columns, and so on. Then based on that, you can, if you feel that there is a risk, then you can do non-destructive tests, which you are looking at the condition of the structural elements without necessarily putting them through any force. So there's a lot of different technologies that are used today that you can even use ground penetrating radar. There's just a whole list. Then if it is a big risk, you can see that there's a problem. You can even start doing load testing.
Okay. One of the things that we can see, for example, that I think people worry about is if there's maybe a fire, it's very difficult to get out of a big building quickly. How big an issue is that? You need to make sure that, some of this is simple. You need to make sure the doors work, the fire exits are clear, things like that. Some of that would be quite easy, but someone still needs to go and look.
Yes, that every building has a fire rating. It's supposed to have a fire rating. That is, how long will a fire burn in the building before the building itself collapses. And then there's also regulations on fire exits and how they should be maintained and so on. So that appears to be easy to look after, because the Occupational Health and Safety Act encourages the employees and the employer to have a committee to look at such things, including, of course, ventilation and so on. So when things end up with the Department of Labor, then you know that there is a problem with that building committee. So some fire exits are used on a day-to-day basis as normal exits, so that is not encouraged. In some instances, a building was repurposed and the fire exits were sealed, or they were no longer maintained with all the equipment that they're supposed to have.
So you can actually tell how long a building will stand if it catches fire. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, they're able to tell. We have got specialists. It's a branch in structural engineering where even at the stage of design, that is also included. So when the design is reviewed, they are able to check that the fire rating of this building is 30 minutes, it's 45 minutes, or it's 1 hour. They were actually able to tell, looking at the finishes and all of that. So that's why when you inherit a building like the one that the police department bought, you now require a new occupancy certificate, because with that will be all that fire rating. They would have had a structural engineer with a specialization in fire ratings, an HVAC, and an electrician, a plumber. All of those professionals would have gone through the building and written their own account, and that is submitted for approval to the city, actually, to the city of Tshwane, to the municipality.
How often should someone be looking at these buildings? How often should someone actually be going and having a look and checking these things for sort of structural integrity and safety in that way?
The Department of Public Works has got an agent called Agreement, which is established through an Act of Parliament. And with that, they have developed a planned maintenance implementation program, which is part of the National Infrastructure Maintenance Strategy. They have got a program which they are supposed to follow on each and every building. My suspicion is that they do not have the full database of all the buildings on their and the details of each building. I think that is the concern, but each building we already know. In fact, nowadays, a building, when it's completed, it comes with a maintenance plan. You know, after 5 years, you are going to check A, B, and C. In fact, I have a colleague here at UCT who can develop a program for each building that will tell you exactly when you should go and maintain it and where you should go to maintain, where there will be a crack in 37 years from now, and so on. Sure. So it's quite advanced. It's structural engineering is advanced like that. So it's known, but if you don't have those advanced systems, they are basic maintenance programs that you need to have so that you are not reacting when there's a problem.
I mean, there are many cars that'll tell you when they need to go for a service and they put a big light on. Your building won't put a big light on when you need to, it's the same thing in a way when the building needs to go for a service. But someone needs to be in charge of it. Does someone sort of have to take care of each building? I mean, is there a sort of legislative way to ensure that someone's actually saying this building now needs to be examined in this way because we're 2 years away from the 37-year crack?
Yes, there is a whole structure that is responsible for that in terms of government buildings, and they report on the 2022 annual report of the Department of Public Works. They have registered that they spent 1.6 billion rands on planned maintenance, which is 72% of their maintenance budget, and 547 million on capital projects. Now the question is, the telecom towers, we hear that 900 million rands was spent over, I think, a 2 or 3 year period. So was it part of the recapitalization, in which case it falls within the 547 million, or was it part of the planned maintenance budget, which falls within 1.6 billion rands? But either way, you can see that figure will be very high for a department that must maintain all the other government buildings across the country. To spend that much on one building, there are quite a few questions to ask there.
Gunda Maswina, thank you. An expert on municipal infrastructure management at the University of Cape Town, an expert on civil engineering too, as you can hear. In a moment, a specialist in ventilation, Giyani Beloy. You're with SAFM, 10 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, some good news at long last. The collision scene on Joburg's N1 North at Rivonia, just going up to Rivonia Road, has finally been cleared. It will take a little while for the traffic backlog to sort of normalise, coming up the N1 North from the Velthreden Park side up through Randburg, and also complicating matters. There's been some really heavy stuff getting off at Winnie Mandela. The lights, again, have been a problem around the highway and around Winnie Mandela and Sloane, and that just means the run out of four ways is heavy across the highway, and it just makes the highway off-ramps absolutely static. So N1 North will take a while to sort of clear and normalise through that. And the N1 South separately is queuing anyway from Rivonia Road down to the Winnie Mandela off-ramp because of the said traffic light problems. The N1 coming through from Midrand, busy. The earlier breakdown after New Road is being cleared. It's just a busy one this Monday as you line up from Old Joburg Road down to about the Olifantsfontein exit. The N11, we've been tracking static traffic there this morning as well between Newcastle and Ladysmith. The protest still looks on the go there. Long queues both ways just north of the 602 Dundee exit, so you could route through Glencoe as an alternative. Take the R68 coming from Newcastle, the 602 from Ladysmith, and basically go through the Dundee region as the alternative routing. Also, the N2 between Mthatha and Dutwa should be avoided. Long queues of traffic with absolutely nowhere to go into some quite aggressive, quite volatile and hostile protesting. I mean, truckers are talking about chaps going up to their truck doors with with pungas and knives and all sorts of threats there. So due to Tatarum tend to cut things. Just stay well away from that. Cape Town, the M7, Jake Scoville Drive stays heavy out of Mitchell's Bay, and that's as you go very slowly up towards a crash at Govan and Becky Bridge. And the N1 inbound, still full of slow-moving traffic between N1 City and the elevated freeway in the CBD. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
Continue your mediated conversation this morning around buildings, unsafe buildings, buildings that are unsafe in which to work. Gianni Beloy is a mechanical engineer specialising in heating, ventilation and air conditioning. Gianni, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning to you and to SAFM listeners.
So in many big buildings, you can't open the windows, and there are ventilation systems that keep them relatively cool or relatively warm. How do these systems work?
Generally, inside any room, you find that there will be people or equipment that is being plugged into an electrical point. So that will generate heat inside the room. So air conditioning, what it does is it removes the unwanted heat inside the room. So if you switch on an aircon, it pushes the air that is inside the room to the outside so that it can be able to cool the area. So how does that work is we normally install an aircon which has to have some form of fresh air so that it can be able to bring in fresh air all the time, and then that air will circulate in the room and keeping clean air inside the space.
So I presume it needs electricity. Does it need water to do this?
Air conditioning system uses electricity with a refrigerant called, or we normally call it gas. So there are different types of refrigerants that you can use. So there are systems which uses air. We call them air-cooled chillers. There are also systems that we call water-cooled chillers. So there are different types of systems that you can use to cool the area or the space that one will be working in.
I have this sort of idea in my head, Gianni, that there'll be a big unit downstairs somewhere, and I presume that a big building would have more than one unit?
Yes, a big building will have more than one unit, depending on how many areas you want to cover. So if you have, let's say, a 10-story building, you are likely to have, you can either use rooftop units, you can either use chillers with air handling units, you can either use boilers using the pipe network to connect to the air handling units again so that you can be able to cool the area or heat up the space.
If the power is out, if there's no electricity, can these systems still run?
No, it cannot. It cannot run. There's only one system at the moment that we can say it can be implemented in certain areas. So far, I only know one area in South Africa. There is a hotel in Cape Town which is using the geothermal system to heat up or to run the HVAC system without electricity. But in other parts of the country, you cannot run a conditioning system without electricity. Example is a normal geyser, which is like a 3 kilowatt element. If you run that on your normal solar system, it is likely to deplete your battery. So meaning you cannot be able to run a system without electricity in your house.
Okay, and then I mean a big building might have a generator, but the generator probably wouldn't be able to keep the air conditioning going.
Sorry, say that again.
You might have a backup generator as in a big building, but it wouldn't be able to keep the air conditioning going.
Yeah, you can use a backup generator, but it has to be of a bigger size so that it can be able to run the air conditioning system. So if it's not bigger capacity, then it won't be able to push the air conditioning system in the building.
When an air conditioner is installed, so for a big building, how expensive are they to run? Do they need a lot of maintenance? And I presume they do, as you say, use a lot of electricity. So is that the main cost?
Maintenance depends on the area or location that the system is operating. So in areas like Gauteng, we don't have much of a dirty air, so you can do your maintenance maybe every 3 months. But in areas like, let me use the electricity generator, the generation company, that area is too much dirty in terms of the air on the outside. So you are likely to do your maintenance on a regular basis, say every month, so that you can keep your system at its optimum. So it depends exactly where the area is for you to be able to determine the maintenance strategy that one needs to follow.
If the ventilation system just stops, so for a long period of load shedding, for example, and obviously it will depend on the building, what happens? Is there still fresh air circulating in some way?
If you don't have windows, then there is no fresh air circulating. So if the system is completely off, you won't be getting any fresh air into the building. You won't be getting any circulation of air in the building. If you have windows, you can open the windows. You'll only get natural air into the building, but it won't be cold air, so it will be determined by the outside temperature. So if the outside is cooler, then it will make the inside temperature to be cooler as well.
And are newer systems cheaper to run than older systems? I mean, we have some very old buildings, some very old big buildings in some parts of the country. Would those air conditioning systems be more expensive to run?
The old system, most of it is using R22 gas, which is now being phased out. I think by the year 2030, that should be out of the system. So currently, we're now having more energy efficient systems that we're installing in many areas. So it also depends on the type of gas that we'll be using, either R410A or R32. So those are the most latest refrigerant gases that one needs to use when installing the system. You can also determine the type of heat that you want the system to operate in so that it does not draw too much electricity from the building.
Gianni Beloy, thank you. Really appreciate the time. Mechanical engineer specializing in heating, ventilation and air conditioning. Really appreciate it. My thanks also to Gunda Maswime, municipal infrastructure specialist in management at UCT and a structural engineer as well. And Tebogo Tejane is the chief director in the Department of Employment and Labour. Well, thanks for being with us today. We will see you tomorrow from Mdu, Melissa, Stanza and Paul. Myself, look after yourself. You're with SFM, leading the conversation at 9 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top story is at 9. Malema says the EFF are ready for coalitions and Ekangala residents protest over water. A very good morning to you. Starting with election news, EFF leader Julius Malema says they are ready to work with like-minded political parties to change the constitution and ensure the realization of the expropriation of land without compensation. He was unpacking his party's 2024 election manifesto on the SABC's Morning Live a short while ago. Malema says politicians need to put their differences aside and look at what is good for poor South Africans. He says they will only listen to those who agree with their 7 non-negotiable cardinal pillars.
The PAC is there, and that which we're preaching, the PAC has been preaching this from the time of Subukwe. The ATM preaches the same, gospel, and many other formations that are there and are willing to say we need to put our differences aside and look at what is in the best interest of an African child. That's the type of language we listen to. MKP now also indicate that the expropriation of land without compensation is fundamental. And those are the kind of language we listen to.
Rand Water says it is going to start reducing water supply to municipalities around the country that have outstanding overdue debt to the company. The water utility says it'll start with reducing the water supply by 20% to the Ngwate municipality in the Free State, which is in arrears of 63 million rand, and the Mirafong municipality in Gauteng, owing them 801 million rand. Randwater spokesperson Makinosi Maruo says they've asked the National Treasury to intervene in trying to recoup these monies.
We are invoking Section 41 of the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act, and we are declaring a intergovernmental financial dispute. So we are seeking intervention from National Treasury, Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, but obviously also including Department of Water and Sanitation. As we know that they do get an allocation from National Treasury, we're saying to National Treasury, it must intervene.
Residents of Ekangala near Bronkhorstspruit in Gauteng are protesting this morning over water shortages in the area. The aggrieved residents say they've been without water for a month. The chairperson of the Ekangala Development Foundation, Rankitsing Ashaqaba, says the area will be under total shutdown today, with even the children not going to school.
There's a lot of story about this water crisis in Bronkhorstspruit. So now we want the province to intervene in this issue and make sure that they resolve this issue, because it's like a month now, our people without water. In the one township, we're only having 6 water tankers, which it can't even reach the numbers of our people. Only essential services that will be working. Everyone, even the school kids, are not going to school today. If